Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Parallel Deku. Back with another fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Was the Shadow Vigilante? Now before starting, please give this video a like. And subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku woke up filled with excitement, as today was the day he would discover what his quirk was. He leaped out of bed and dashed to Inko's room. He called out to his mother, eager to share his enthusiasm. Inko, waking up with a smile, greeted him warmly and playfully tickled him, eliciting laughter from Izuku. Inko suggested that he get dressed, have breakfast, and then they would head out to find out about his quirk. She checked the time on her phone, noting that they had plenty of time before their appointment at 10 a.m. After a few moments, Izuku, now dressed, rushed to the table, eagerly awaiting breakfast. He wondered aloud what kind of quirk he might receive, imagining all the possibilities. Inko reassured him that no matter what, she would be happy for him. Time passed, and they found themselves in the waiting room. When the nurse called for Izuku Midoriya, he excitedly urged his mother to follow him. Inko complied, and they walked together to meet the quirk doctor. Inko greeted the doctor with a smile, and he returned the gesture. The doctor then asked Izuku what he wanted to be when he grew up. Izuku declared his dream of becoming the greatest hero, just like All Might. The doctor nodded and prepared to check Izuku's quirk. After the examination, the doctor asked Inko to step outside for a moment. Izuku was left wondering why his mother had to leave. The doctor then turned to Izuku with a serious expression and asked him to promise to keep what he was about to say a secret. Izuku eagerly agreed, curious about his quirk. The doctor chuckled before revealing that Izuku had multiple quirks. Izuku was taken aback, hardly able to believe it. The doctor explained the first quirk, Shadow, which had several abilities: Shadow Leap, allowing him to move between shadows; Shadow Manipulation, enabling him to create things from shadows; and Nightmare, which could make someone see their greatest fear. However, there were drawbacks, including headaches and insomnia. The doctor continued with the second quirk, Glitch. This quirk allowed for teleportation and the ability to cause malfunctions, but it came with the risk of losing control if emotions ran high, leading to erratic teleportation and potential fevers. Next, the doctor described Voice Manipulation, which required singing a specific song to control others, but it had limitations on the number of people he could influence and could result in losing his voice if overused. Invisibility was another quirk, allowing Izuku to choose when to become invisible, but staying invisible for too long would leave him exhausted. Lastly, the doctor mentioned Regeneration, which would enable Izuku to heal quickly, but it would only become effective when he turned 12. Izuku was in awe, realizing he possessed 5 quirks. The doctor advised him to act as though he was quirkless for his safety and promised to inform Inko of this. Tears welled in Izuku's eyes as he nodded in understanding. When Inko returned, she noticed her son was upset and immediately embraced him, concerned about what had happened. The doctor, maintaining the ruse, informed her that Izuku was quirkless, which shocked her. She quickly composed herself and decided it was time to leave. As they walked out of the hospital, Inko felt a surge of anger beneath her calm facade. Once in the car, she watched as Izuku climbed in, feeling a mix of frustration and concern. He nervously reminded her about his seatbelt, but Inko dismissed his worries. After a tense drive home, Inko dragged Izuku inside, slamming the door behind them. I grabbed the boy's hair and threw him against the wall. From that moment on, he would call me, "Ma'am," make my meals, clean the house, and walk to school. Did he understand? He nodded in response. I ordered him to clean the house before I lost my temper. He quickly got up and ran to grab the broom. I was determined to make his life difficult. And that was how Izuku's life would be from then on, a constant struggle. I felt a pang of sympathy for him. It was strange that he never thought about his father. Izuku was now 11 and in middle school, just shy of his 12th birthday. Ever since he had confided in Bakugou about being quirkless, he had been bullied relentlessly. Now he lay in bed, dreading the day ahead. He didn't want to get up after the rough night he had endured. Inko, his mother, had really gone all out that time. He referred to her as Inko because she had never truly cared for him. Since he was 4, she had been harsh, and it had only escalated. To make matters worse, his former best friend was now his bully. His wounds had not fully healed, and he reflected on his unfortunate life. Slowly, he got up and prepared for school. Skipping breakfast, he tried to leave quietly, but life seemed to conspire against him. Inko appeared, demanding to know where he thought he was going without saying goodbye. He froze, unsure how to respond, as she glared at him with anger. She shouted for him to leave before she lost her temper. With that, he rushed out of the house, immediately regretting it when he felt something warm dripping down his back. He realized it was blood and cursed under his breath. He had to change his bandages again. He hurried to school, keeping an eye out for Bakugou. Once he arrived, he went straight to the bathroom, ignoring the stares from others. After patching himself up, he was about to leave when he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. His eyes, usually green, now had a hint of purple and seemed to flicker. He had always had this quirk, but it was more pronounced now. How was he supposed to hide this from everyone? He felt himself glitching slightly and panicked. He needed to calm down. After taking a moment, he managed to steady himself, but his eyes remained the same. He decided to keep his head down and put on his hoodie to cover his eyes. Arriving in class, he found it empty and went to his desk, resting his head down and listening to music until he fell asleep. He was jolted awake by someone slamming their hands on his desk. Bakugou was furious, demanding to know why Izuku had skipped his morning punishment. Startled, Izuku tried to avoid eye contact and kept his head down, which only fueled Bakugou's anger. Bakugou shouted for him to respond, and the other bullies joined in, eager for a confrontation. Izuku felt overwhelmed and considered running away, but he knew that would only make them angrier. Suddenly, Bakugou unleashed an explosion right in front of him, sending Izuku flying out of his seat and crashing against the wall. He felt blood trickling from his head and back. Bakugou and the others taunted him, urging him to fight back. Izuku decided to take a risk and make a run for it. As they approached, he managed to stand up and thought about how to get past them. With a burst of determination, he shouted a challenge and dashed out of the classroom, eager to see their reaction. He jumped onto a nearby tree and climbed to the top, teasing them from above. Bakugou shouted for him to come down, counting to 3. Izuku, feeling a mix of fear and excitement, decided to leap from the tree, performing a backflip and landing gracefully before continuing to run. Bakugou and the others chased after him, but once they were out of sight, Izuku found his hiding spot on the roof. He spent the day there, knowing he had to come up with a plan while tending to his wounds. Meanwhile, Bakugou and the others searched everywhere for him, frustrated that they couldn't find him. They decided to skip classes in their pursuit. They took a break and headed to the roof. There he was, standing close to the edge. What was he doing? Was he trying to scare them? It certainly wasn't working. Of course, they didn't care if he jumped. They thought he was being reckless. Izuku turned around, not showing his eyes, and smiled before saying goodbye. He decided to make it look cool. He performed a backflip and jumped off the roof, teleporting to the ground before they could see. They rushed to the edge and looked down to see him perfectly fine. He waved at them and walked away, determined not to return the next day. Running away seemed like the best idea ever. Once in his room, he quietly changed clothes and packed the essentials. After finishing, he teleported out with his belongings and wandered around, searching for a place to sleep. As he walked, a sudden thought crossed his mind. Why had he never seen his father? Where could he be? It seemed he must have abandoned him and Inko. Then he spotted a potential hiding place. Standing in front of an abandoned school, he noted how it was out of sight, perfect for him. He had also taken some money from Inko's room, and it was a lot, 2 bags full. He set his things down and decided to go for a walk. Under a bridge, he heard a voice. A villainous figure loomed, threatening to consume him in gooey slime. Before he could react, a familiar voice echoed nearby. All Might, the #1 hero, arrived, chasing the villain. With a powerful move, he dispatched the villain and turned to Izuku, asking if he was okay. Izuku felt frustrated. He had just been attacked, and the hero's question felt absurd. He forced a smile and thanked All Might for saving him. As the hero prepared to leave, Izuku had an idea. He grabbed All Might's leg as he jumped, finding himself in the sky. All Might demanded to be let go, but Izuku pointed out that if he did, he might fall. The hero paused, acknowledging the point, and landed on a building. Izuku hesitated before asking if a quirkless kid like him could become a hero. He genuinely wanted to know All Might's thoughts on quirkless individuals. All Might burst into laughter, claiming a quirkless person would never survive as a hero. He dismissed Izuku's question and left, still chuckling. Izuku stood there, not particularly fazed but feeling sympathy for those without quirks. He realized All Might viewed quirkless people as useless, and a new determination ignited within him. With a creepy smile, he walked away, contemplating his path. If he couldn't be a hero, he would become a vigilante. He was eager to see how far All Might would get as the #1 hero. A year had passed since Izuku first emerged as the #1 vigilante, Shadow, evading nearly every hero. It was midnight, and he sat in his room reflecting on the past. He despised his history but felt thankful he wasn't like those wannabe heroes. It was time to patrol. He donned his suit and jumped out the window, still residing in the school. While running across the rooftops, he heard a scream and instinctively rushed to the source. He landed quietly on a nearby roof and spotted a thug pinning a girl against the wall with a gun to her head in an alley. The girl pleaded for help, but the thug silenced her, demanding money under the threat of violence. Izuku sprang into action, activating his voice changer and using his nightmare ability as he jumped down. The thug turned, trembling at the sight of him, and fell into a state of fear as he faced his worst nightmares. Izuku deactivated the ability and approached the girl. He asked if she was okay and for her name. She confirmed her safety and introduced herself as Kyokujiro. Izuku explained it was his job to help and inquired if she had a phone. She nodded and retrieved it. He pulled out a notepad and wrote down the details of the incident. He asked her to call the police and give them the note. She agreed and made the call, and soon sirens echoed in the distance. With a wave, he bid her good night and prepared to leave. The girl expressed her gratitude for being saved. The protagonist then turned invisible, waiting for the police to arrive to ensure everything was secure. Once they arrived, the protagonist ran to the highest building and sat down, gazing out at the quiet city below. Feeling a sense of emptiness, the protagonist decided to sing, as there was nothing else to occupy the mind. A song came to mind, and the voice changer was turned off, ready to fill the silence with music, even if the melody carried a hint of sadness. I just need some time, I'm trying to think straight. I just need a moment in my own space. If someone asks how I'm doing, I'll say, okay, but isn't that what we all say? Sometimes I think back to the old days, to the pointless conversations with my former self, back when my mother used to hold me. I wish someone would have told me. My voice manipulation quirk was active, allowing me to hide my presence. If you want love, you have to go through the pain. If you want love, you have to learn how to change. If you want trust, you have to give some away. If you want love, Tears filled my eyes as I remembered the hardships I faced. As a child, I used to think life moved so slowly, watching it pass by from the bus window. I thought the world was small through my closed eyes. I've always tried to control things, but in the end, that's what controls me. Maybe that's why I feel the need to be in control. I wish someone would have told me. I closed my eyes and tried to calm myself, sensing a presence behind me. I knew who it was, but I continued to sing with my eyes still closed. If you want love, you have to go through the pain. If you want love, you have to learn how to change. If you want trust, you have to give some away. If you want love. I could tell he was trying to hide his presence, but it didn't work. The older I get, I feel like I'm always trying to save time. I talk to the voices in my head. They make me think twice. They tell me that just because it feels right doesn't mean it's wrong. I'm scared that one day I'll wake up and wonder where the time has gone, talking about the past like it's the present while I rock slowly. I imagine sitting in the living room, laughing with my own kids, and telling them about life. I opened my eyes and looked at the sky. If you want love, you have to go through the pain. I wish someone would have told me. If you want love, you have to learn how to change. I wish someone would have told me. If you want trust, You have to give some away. You have to give. If you want love, if you want love. After finishing the song, I looked down, remembering someone was behind me. I activated my voice changer. He didn't think I would know it was him. He stepped out of the shadows and sat next to me, gazing at the city. He asked what I meant by my song. I pointed out that he had just sung a sad song. He shrugged and looked away. To be honest, I had started to feel a fondness for him, almost like a fatherly affection. We shared a moment of silence until he spoke again, saying he had to go because it was late and that he would bring me coffee next time. I told him there was no need, but he insisted he had already decided. With a cheerful goodnight, he jumped off the roof, disappearing into the shadows. He really is a problem child. I headed home, greeted by my cats jumping on me. After dealing with that, I went to my room and saw Hisashi asleep. I climbed into bed and let the darkness envelop me. Once I arrived at the school I called home, I went to the room filled with computers, hacked into the cameras, and scanned the entire school before going to sleep. I woke up, grabbed my phone, and checked the time. It was 9 a.m. I wanted to lay in bed all day, but I decided to get up. I went to the computer room, checked all the cameras, and then headed to the room where I slept. I checked one bag and saw it was more than halfway full, while the other was completely full. I thought I had used a lot, but there was still some left. I decided to buy something to eat. After grabbing some clothes, I took a shower. Once I was done, I applied some black washable dye and returned to my room, took some money, and left the school, ensuring no one was following me. That food was delicious. I was sitting on a bench in a park when I spotted someone very familiar, someone I couldn't forget. Why did he have to be here? I thought God was on my side. It had been a while since I had seen Bakugou, but now he had spoiled my mood. I got up and walked away before he could see me, turning a corner into an alleyway and teleporting to a roof near the school. The character settled down near the edge of a serene lake, preparing to pass the time with a song. They reflected on the high hopes they had for their future, dreaming of greatness despite the challenges they faced. With a vision in mind, they believed they could achieve something extraordinary, always maintaining that sense of optimism. As they gazed at the sky, swinging their legs back and forth, memories of their mother's encouraging words echoed in their mind. She had urged them to fulfill their destiny and create a legacy, to reach for everything they desired. The character felt a wave of emotion, wiping away tears as they looked back up at the sky, recalling the joy of simpler times before chaos had entered their life. Determined not to give up, they remembered their mother's advice about perseverance, even when things seemed complicated. They clenched their fist, a smile forming as they recalled her words about embracing their uniqueness and never changing who they were. With a sudden burst of energy, they teleported to the familiar lake where they had shared countless memories with Bakugou. Sitting by the water, they marveled at their reflection, momentarily seeing themselves as a child before splashing the water playfully. As they continued to reflect, a gentle rabbit approached, and they reached down to pet it. Soon, more rabbits gathered around, some even sitting in their lap. The character felt a sense of peace amidst the chaos of the world. Suddenly, a twig snapped nearby, and they turned to see Bakugou approaching. Frustration bubbled within them, and they decided to ignore him, placing the rabbits down and walking away. Bakugou called out, demanding their attention, but they continued on, teleporting home to escape the confrontation. Later, as midnight approached, the character donned their suit and leaped out of their window, running across rooftops to patrol the quiet city. They sensed something was off and decided to investigate. Meanwhile, Aizawa was grappling with the hero's plans to capture Shadow. Nizu insisted that he join the effort, but Aizawa felt conflicted about betraying someone's trust. In another part of the city, Izuku was on high alert. He had already apprehended several criminals, but the night was far from peaceful. Hearing a scream, he felt compelled to investigate. Turning invisible, he approached the source of the commotion and saw a thug pinning a woman against the wall. The situation felt familiar, and he sensed more presences nearby. As he observed the scene, he overheard a man demanding to know where someone was, and realization struck him. The heroes had set a trap to capture him, but he was determined to evade their plans. Scanning the area, he recognized several heroes present, including Beach Might, Endeavor, Hawks, Midnight, Present Mic, and Erasurehead. The night was about to take an unexpected turn. Not bad heroes, but not enough. The protagonist then slipped into the shadows and created a clone. Two could play this game, but they needed to be quick. They didn't want to remain invisible for an entire day. Teleporting back to their original position, they controlled the clone, ensuring their quirk remained hidden. The clone emerged from the shadows, brandishing a weapon. The protagonist feigned ignorance about the hero's presence, which didn't matter since it was the clone, not them. The clone confronted Beach Might, who was holding Midnight. Beach Might questioned why they should comply. As Beach Might released Midnight and approached the clone, Midnight shouted for everyone to attack. The fight began, and the protagonist felt uncertain about their fighting skills. Beach Might struck, knocking the sword from the clone's hand, but the clone swiftly swept Beach Might off his feet, causing him to fall. The clone performed a backflip to evade Endeavor's flames, Hawk's feathers, and Erasurehead's scarf, then leaped onto the roof. Realizing they couldn't maintain control for long, the protagonist considered revealing their quirks. The clone vanished, and they waited for the heroes to reach the rooftop. The heroes surrounded the protagonist, preparing to attack. Beach Might demanded their surrender, to which the protagonist questioned why they should. Endeavor unleashed flames, but the protagonist sidestepped. Despite being pushed back, the protagonist remained standing, feeling a bit of blood trickle from their ears but otherwise fine. Hawks swooped down from above, attempting to grab them, but the protagonist leaned back, unexpectedly glitching. Endeavor expressed confusion at the sight. Before the protagonist could regain composure, Midnight activated her quirk, but the protagonist wore a gas mask, rendering it ineffective. As the heroes prepared to strike, the protagonist teleported to a nearby roof and fled. Beach Might shouted for everyone to pursue. Hawks was hot on their trail, while Erasurehead attempted to ensnare them with his scarf, but the protagonist evaded it. Endeavor launched a large fireball, which the protagonist didn't see coming. They were at the edge of the building when the fireball struck, sending them tumbling off the roof. However, before hitting the ground, they teleported behind Present Mic and knocked him out. The fireball singed their back, but their regeneration healed the injury as they continued to run until they lost the heroes. They hadn't anticipated the difficulty of the encounter, realizing the heroes now knew about their multiple quirks. After teleporting to the school, they removed their suit and went to sleep, feeling exhausted and aware that they needed to be more cautious next time. It had been a few weeks since the attack, and Izuku had been careful to avoid any encounters, even with Erasurehead. The betrayal weighed on him, but he understood it was part of being a hero while he remained a vigilante. At midnight he sat on a rooftop, gazing at the city when he heard footsteps behind him. Erasurehead approached, sighing as he took a seat beside Izuku. Not meeting his gaze, Izuku continued to watch the city. Erasurehead asked what he was doing, to which Izuku replied that he was doing his job better. After a moment of silence, Izuku decided to leave without another word, still feeling anger over the betrayal. A song came to mind, and he turned off his voice changer, singing as he ran. He used shadow manipulation to create wings and leaped off the roof, soaring into the sky. As he flew higher, he waited for the right moment, singing about flying away. He closed his shadow wings and dived down, opening them just before hitting the ground, gliding gracefully through the air. He flew over the water, touching it with his hands, and continued to sing about change and journeys meant to be taken. When he reached the climax of the song, he dove again, catching himself before hitting the water and creating a splash. After enjoying the freedom of flight, he returned to the city, soaring around before landing on a building and letting his wings disappear. He gazed at the moon, reflecting on the changes ahead. As the song concluded, he noticed the school wasn't far away, so he teleported, checked the cameras, and attempted to sleep, despite his insomnia. That had been fun, he thought. Like every morning, he checked the time, got dressed, and reviewed the cameras. The day began with a sense of boredom. An idea struck, and Shadow decided to hack into Nizu's computer, finding it surprisingly easy. Shadow greeted Nizu with a cheerful message, and Nizu acknowledged the hack with a mix of amusement and surprise. They quickly agreed to play a game of chess, and after several rounds, Shadow emerged victorious each time. Eventually, they decided to pause the game for another day. As evening approached, Shadow prepared for the night by getting into a suit. Afterward, a quick hack into the police files revealed no criminals to capture, which felt dull. Seeking more excitement, Shadow accessed Yue's files and stumbled upon Endeavor's incomplete file, which piqued interest given his history of questionable actions. Time slipped away, and before long, it was late. Shadow teleported into a shadow in an alley near the school, ready to explore the area. Noticing an increased presence of heroes on night patrol, Shadow took extra caution, deciding to venture into a less frequented part of the city. The area appeared abandoned, but Shadow remained vigilant, aware that appearances could be deceiving. After some time, Shadow discovered a surprising number of people in the area, realizing that the heroes needed to take their jobs more seriously. As dawn approached, Shadow teleported back to the school, knowing that sleep would come quickly. After changing into casual clothes, dyeing hair, and grabbing some money, Shadow set out for a walk, hoping to avoid encounters with Bakugou and Erasurehead. However, fate had other plans, and Shadow unexpectedly ran into Bakugou. The encounter was tense, but Shadow continued walking without looking back, contemplating a trip to the library for a book after grabbing breakfast. After enjoying a meal, Shadow entered the library, losing track of time while engrossed in reading. Hours passed, and when Shadow finally emerged, it was late afternoon. Realizing how much time had slipped away, Shadow felt inspired to sing a favorite song. Teleporting to the beach, Shadow found the area deserted and began to sing, the sound echoing in the stillness. Using shadow manipulation, flames flickered around, creating a mesmerizing display. Shadow reveled in the warmth and beauty of the flames, enjoying the thrill of playing with fire. As the performance concluded, Bakugou was nearby, having heard the singing. Curious, he hid to observe, recognizing Shadow from their previous encounters. Just as mysteriously as he appeared, Shadow vanished into thin air, leaving Bakugou intrigued. Later, Izuku, feeling the weight of exhaustion, opted to teleport back to the school instead of walking. With patrol duties looming, he braced himself for the usual quiet night, but the thought of testing his flames brought a spark of excitement. As morning arrived, Izuku found himself wide awake despite the late hour he returned home. Frustrated by his insomnia, he longed for sleep but felt trapped in wakefulness. Determined to rest, he resolved to stay in bed until sleep finally came. After a couple of hours of struggle, he finally drifted off, hoping for a better night ahead. After sleeping the entire day, I woke up at 11 p.m. Although I wanted to stay in bed, I knew I had to go on patrol, which would be exhausting, but I was determined to go. I got up, took a shower, put on my suit, checked the cameras, and finally jumped out the window. As I leaped from rooftop to rooftop, I heard a scream and immediately rushed toward the sound. When I arrived, I saw a woman backed against a wall with a man blocking the entrance of the alley. I crouched down, waiting for the right moment to spring into action. The man taunted the woman, getting closer to her, and I seized the opportunity to attack. I jumped down from the roof, landing silently, and approached the man as he continued his unwanted advances. Not wanting to escalate the situation into a full fight, I struck his pulse, incapacitating him, tied him up, and wrote down what had happened. After ensuring the woman was okay, I asked her to call the police, handed her the note, and then retreated to the roof to wait. As sirens approached, I ran away. I dashed to the tallest building, relieved to find it empty. Standing at the edge, I gazed over the city. If I had done this during the day, people might have thought I was about to jump. The thought made me chuckle as I continued to observe the city. A few minutes later, I heard another scream, and a sense of unease washed over me. Like before, I turned invisible and headed toward the sound. Upon arrival, I spotted a boy who looked to be my age pinned against the wall by a man demanding money. Before I could act, I sensed the presence of heroes nearby. It was the same group as last time, but this time they had brought Edgeshot and Best Jeanist. They were clearly there to intervene, which meant this was a real robbery, and they were waiting for me to finish with the man so they could capture me. I was growing tired of their persistent attempts to catch me. I planned to deal with this thug quickly, lead the heroes to a roof, and then feign sadness to throw them off my trail. I disabled my invisibility and teleported right in front of the man, startling him. I then teleported behind him and kicked him, sending him stumbling forward. I appeared in front of him again and punched him. He offered little resistance, and soon I had him knocked out. I almost forgot about the boy standing behind me and quickly wrote down what had happened, waiting for his response. He introduced himself as Denki Kaminari. I asked if he had a phone and he nodded, pulling it out. I scanned the area, uncertain if the heroes would attack. I instructed him to call the police and give them the note I had written. After handing it to him, I teleported to a nearby roof where Denki could see me. I waited for the police until I finally heard the sirens and stood up. Denki expressed his gratitude for my help, and I simply waved at him before running away to avoid being seen by the police. Now I had to deal with the heroes again. Why couldn't they just leave me alone? I ran to a random building and sat at the edge, looking up at the moon. I sighed, wishing I could just sleep. As I admired the moon, a song came to mind. I turned off my voice changer and began to sing softly, expressing my longing for a place to call home, a refuge from the burdens I carried. I sang about the struggles I faced, the pain that lingered, and the hope for a better tomorrow. I reflected on how dreams had turned into nightmares, how I felt so far from where I wanted to be, and the unfairness of the world. I yearned for a sign, a way to find my way back to a place where I could feel safe. As I finished, I closed my eyes, wishing for peace and the chance to finally rest. The heroes were likely feeling quite emotional at that moment. Izuku had not found a cure for his loneliness or the sickness that plagued him. Nothing around felt like home. The crowded streets only amplified his sense of isolation. He longed for someone to take him home. After finishing his tasks, he stopped the glitching and heard a few sniffs. He teleported to the school, knowing the heroes would follow if he ran. After taking a shower, getting dressed, and heading to the computer room, he encountered a cute cat. As he petted it, 3 more cats came running to him. It seemed the first cat had been the bait. He laughed at the thought and played with them for a while. When he finally made his way to the computer room, the cats followed him. It appeared he had unwittingly become their owner. Once he finished, he went to his sleeping quarters, fed the cats, and lay down in bed. A few minutes later, they joined him, curling up beside him as he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, after Izuku teleported to the school, the heroes returned to UA to inform Nizu about the situation. Erasurehead wondered what had transpired and felt the urgency to catch Shadow. Nizu asked if their mission had been successful, but Erasurehead replied that they had not captured him. Hawks added that they had followed Shadow but had not gathered much information, only that he seemed to be in distress. Midnight noted that he had sounded sad and had sung something about home. Nizu speculated that Shadow missed home but was facing difficulties. Erasurehead decided to leave, but Mike insisted they still needed to plan their next move. Meanwhile, Izuku lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind blank. He slowly sat up, careful not to wake the cats, and went to get dressed and shower. Afterward, he headed to the computer room and checked the cameras. To his surprise, he saw 4 people in the building, a girl, a man, and 2 heroes, Hawks and Endeavor. Realizing the man must have chased the heroes there and that the girl was likely a hostage, Izuku quickly moved to a hidden spot. The man demanded to be left alone in exchange for the girl's safety, while Hawks urged him to surrender. As the man prepared to draw a weapon, Izuku felt a surge of determination. He wasn't in his suit, but he couldn't stand by. He rushed at the man, pushing the girl aside and striking him. However, he didn't notice Endeavor's fireball aimed at the man. And as he dodged, he began glitching. Hawks called out to him, but Izuku didn't respond and fled. Hawks instructed Endeavor to take care of the girl while he pursued Izuku. Feeling overwhelmed, Izuku ran aimlessly, trying to evade capture. He found a door leading to the roof and frantically searched for an escape route until Hawks caught up with him. Hawks tried to reason with him, but Izuku remained silent, stepping back toward the edge in a panic. Hawks warned him to stop, but Izuku continued to retreat until he lost his footing and fell off the roof. In a moment of desperation, he teleported to the ground and then to his room in the school, relieved to have escaped. Still glitching from the encounter, he knew he had to hide. Just then Luna, one of the cats, approached him, and he sat in the corner of the room as the others joined. Luna touched him with her paw, and suddenly, they found themselves at a serene lake. Confused, Izuku questioned what had happened, and Luna nodded, settling in his lap. To his astonishment, he realized Luna had a quirk. Ragdoll then revealed her telepathy, confirming that all the cats possessed unique abilities. Mimi began to fly, lifting Izuku off the ground, while Kiki summoned tendrils from the earth, lifting them higher. After a brief adventure, Luna touched him again, and they teleported back to the school. Izuku spent time playing with the cats before cautiously making his way to the computer room, ensuring he didn't encounter any heroes. Once there, he discovered the heroes had left. Seizing the opportunity, he decided to hack into UA's cameras for some fun. As he scanned the feeds, he noticed the heroes gathered in the meeting room. With a mischievous grin, he hacked into the speakers, donned his mask, activated a voice changer, and began his playful broadcast. He introduced himself as Shadow, the friendly vigilante, ready to stir up some excitement. I regret to inform you that the building will be in lockdown. Goodbye. With that, the lockdown was initiated, securing all the windows, doors, and exits of the school. It was a response to the unexpected intrusion. Afterward, I got up, decided to dye my hair, it was washable, put in black contact lenses, took some money, fed the cats, and went for a walk. What should I do now? The library came to mind. I headed there and spent my time reading. Time passed, and it was now 5 p.m. I had been at the library for 10 hours, losing track of time in my love for reading. I decided to walk around and see what else I could do. After wandering for about 20 minutes, I accidentally bumped into someone. Why does this keep happening? I signed an apology, as the person understood sign language, and continued on my way. However, they placed a hand on my shoulder, asking where I thought I was going. Turning around, I was startled to find it was Erasurehead. Panic surged through me, but I managed to keep my composure. Running seemed like the best option. Erasurehead called out as I dashed away, and he began to chase me. It felt like a game of cat and mouse, and I was determined to outsmart him. I noticed he wasn't armed with his usual capture weapon or scarf, which gave me a slight edge. He wasn't too close yet, but I couldn't help but worry about what would happen if he caught me. After some time, I was still running and starting to feel exhausted. Erasurehead was gaining on me, so I needed to find a place to hide before he caught up. I reached the park where Bakugou and I used to play and ducked behind a tree, sitting down to catch my breath. Finally, I was able to rest, but the game wasn't over yet. Then it hit me I could teleport. Why hadn't I thought of that sooner? I teleported to my room in the school, but it gave me a headache since I had gone a bit too far. I settled down in my sleeping spot, and the cats came running to me. Just like before, Luna teleported us to a field full of daisies. The tranquility of the place was my favorite aspect. I lay back, and the cats nestled beside me. I wished it could be like this all the time. Checking my phone, I realized it was 7 p.m. Had Erasurehead chased me for 2 hours? I still had 4 hours before I needed to patrol. I could just relax here or play with the cats, but I was indecisive. Ragdoll offered to take us somewhere else if I wanted. I had forgotten about her telepathy. I asked if it was okay with Luna, and after a brief exchange, they both agreed. Ragdoll asked if there was a specific place I wanted to go. I replied that anywhere was fine. Luna approached me, and we were soon teleported to a beautiful lake reminiscent of a fairy tale. I got up, sat at the edge of the water, and took off my shoes and socks, dipping my feet into the cool water. It was so relaxing. I lay back and played with the cats for about half an hour, but it felt a bit too quiet, so I began to sing. I reflected on my choices, realizing I should have been in bed instead of indulging in distractions. Yet, the temptations lingered on my tongue, hinting at troubles ahead. One sip, one hit, one kiss each was bad for me, but I gave in so easily. I knew I should stay strong, but I felt weak, and there was nothing wrong with that. I loved the thrill of falling for it. As I finished singing, my throat felt a bit sore, likely a consequence of my enthusiasm. I continued to play with the cats, but boredom soon set in. Should I sing another song? I decided to ask Luna if she could teleport us back to the library. With her agreement, we were soon in the library again, where I read for about 2.5 hours. Afterward, I asked Luna to teleport us back to the school. I washed out the dye, removed the contact lenses, put on my suit, checked to make sure I had everything, fed the cats, and jumped out the window, something I had always wanted to do. I ran from rooftop to rooftop when I suddenly heard a scream. I turned invisible just in case and teleported to the source of the sound. Upon arrival, I found myself in the right spot, witnessing a woman and her son surrounded by 5 individuals. Izuku crouched down, watching and listening intently. A woman pleaded for her and her son to be left alone, while one of the men insisted they only wanted to conduct experiments. The leader of the group scolded another for revealing their intentions, and amidst their bickering, Izuku saw an opportunity to help the woman and her child. He jumped off the roof, landing silently beside them, placing his hands on their shoulders before teleporting them a short distance away. The woman, startled, asked who was there. Izuku revealed himself, explaining that he was a vigilante named Shadow and that they were safe now. He waved goodbye, turned invisible, and teleported back to the group of men, who remained unaware that their captives had escaped. The leader shouted at his companions, reminding them of their mission. When they turned to find the woman gone, panic set in. Izuku, feeling a mix of pain in his throat and determination, began to sing softly, using his powers to summon shadowy figures that resembled monsters. The men fought against these creatures, but they kept reappearing, relentless in their pursuit. As he continued to manipulate shadows, Izuku sang about the darkness within him, embracing the chaos. The men were frozen in fear as he activated a nightmare effect, causing them to confront their deepest fears. He then summoned even larger shadow monsters to engage them in battle. With the men overwhelmed, Izuku deactivated his powers and continued to sing, ensuring they were incapacitated. Once they were subdued, he wrote a note, attached it to one of the men, and teleported them to the police. However, the exertion took its toll, causing him to experience a headache and a nosebleed. Frustrated by the drawbacks of his abilities, he lamented his situation. After teleporting to the school, Izuku felt his headache worsen. He made his way to his sleeping area, where the cats rushed to him, looking concerned. One of them asked if he was okay, but he reassured them that they could just call him Izuku. The cats settled beside him, and he surprisingly drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Izuku carefully stood up, trying not to disturb the sleeping cats, but his headache flared up again. Remembering his drawbacks, he felt his forehead, relieved to find that his fever was subsiding. He decided to hack into UA's systems to check on things, but first, he needed to get dressed and shower. After preparing, he fed the cats and then headed to the computer room. He hacked into the cameras around the school to ensure no one would surprise him. Once satisfied, he accessed UA's cameras and observed the activities. Erasurehead was asleep, while Mike and Vlad were busy teaching their classes. Frustrated by the lack of action, Izuku decided to pass the time by reading through the files of pro heroes. 3 hours later, he was infuriated to find that Endeavor's file was lacking in detail about his past misdeeds. Feeling that it was unfair, he stood up and returned to his sleeping area, where the cats were finishing their meal. With nothing else to do, he decided to go for a walk. He dyed his hair, put in contact lenses, grabbed some money, and took his phone, knowing that teleporting would only worsen his headache. I was now out of school, just walking, but as usual, I bumped into someone. Frustrated, I wondered why I kept colliding with people. Looking up, I recognized the girl I had saved a few months ago, Jiro, I think. She quickly apologized, mentioning she wasn't paying attention and had to rush off. With that, she hurried away. She seemed to be in a hurry, but that was none of my business. I was relieved I didn't have to engage in conversation, given my social anxiety. Continuing on my way, I stumbled upon a beach littered with trash. It baffled me why people would dump garbage on such a beautiful beach. Memories of my childhood with Inko flooded back, reminding me of happier times I had almost forgotten. Shaking my head to clear my thoughts, I walked along the shore. Suddenly, something shiny caught my eye in the trash. I picked it up and discovered it was a pocket knife, still looking new, so I tucked it into my pocket. There might be more useful items around, so I decided to search the area before heading off to grab a bite to eat. A little later, I found myself sitting in a cat cafe. I had actually discovered quite a few useful things at the beach. As I sipped my large cup of coffee, I heard the doorbell ring and turned to see who had entered. I nearly spilled my drink when I saw Erasurehead walk in. Of course, he would be here. It was a popular cafe after all. Keeping my head down, I took out my phone to distract myself. A few minutes later, a man burst in, brandishing a gun and grabbing me, pressing it against my head. I remained calm and still. The robber demanded money, threatening my life. I silently urged Erasurehead to act quickly. It seemed like Erasurehead was deep in thought, and I felt a surge of frustration. I couldn't wait any longer. I kicked the robber, hitting him where it hurt, causing him to double over. Taking advantage of his moment of weakness, I swiftly kicked him in the face, knocking him out. I noticed other patrons recording the incident on their phones. It infuriated me that they were more interested in filming than helping. After grabbing my coffee and leaving a tip for the cashier, I walked out without saying another word. How could people be so oblivious? I was too exhausted to dwell on it, especially after everything that had just happened. As I walked for a few minutes, a realization struck me. I had completely forgotten about my ability called Shadow Leap. I had walked for no reason. I focused and Shadow Leaped, teleporting into an alley near the school. Trying again, I Shadow Leaped into my room. It seemed I couldn't leap that far, but it was good enough. I went to the bathroom to remove my contact lenses, washed my hair, and Shadow Leaped back to my room. Sitting at my desk, I pulled out my phone to keep myself occupied. While scrolling, I stumbled upon a video of a kid defeating a robber in a cat cafe. I couldn't believe it when I realized it was me in the footage. Did they really have to post that online? Now I had to be extra cautious. I longed for a day without any drama or chaos. As the sun began to set, I prepared for the night ahead. I decided to start early, planning to avoid heroes who might discover my drawbacks, though I did want to annoy them a little. I gathered some smoke and glitter bombs and jumped out of the window. I ran until I reached the tallest building and Shadow Leaped to the top, sitting on the edge to take in the view of the city. It was truly beautiful from up there. Hours passed, and by 2 a.m., I had successfully annoyed Endeavor and managed to escape without a hitch. I had intervened in a few minor crimes, but it had been relatively quiet. I was grateful for the peace as I was feeling quite tired. Perched on a random building, I appeared to have dozed off when I heard someone land behind me, followed by a gasp. It was Aizawa. This was my chance to prank him. As he approached, I remained still, feigning sleep. He crouched down and tapped me, asking if I was okay. I wanted nothing more than to sleep. Just as he was about to pick me up, I threw a glitter bomb in his face, followed by a smoke bomb, and Shadow Leaped a street away. He hadn't seen that coming. I chuckled to myself, imagining how annoying it would be for him to clean up. I wondered who else I could prank that night. And so, the rest of the morning unfolded with me saving people and playing pranks on the heroes. It had been a week since Izuku could finally talk and use his quirks. He felt elated after a challenging week. It was 5 a.m., and as usual, he couldn't sleep. Lying on the ground, staring at the ceiling, he pondered what to do. Deciding to hack into some files, he made his way to the computer room. He sat down and accessed the police files, but found nothing new except for the names of the criminals he had previously dealt with. Next, he hacked into UA's files, but again, there was nothing of interest. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes, feeling a sense of boredom wash over him. Ragdoll entered the room and jumped onto Izuku's lap, asking if he was okay. He replied that he was just bored. Ragdoll suggested they could take him somewhere, and after some playful banter, they decided to go to a mountain. Ragdoll leaped off him, and soon Luna and the others arrived, teleporting them to a beautiful mountain landscape. Izuku sat on the ground, gazing at the early morning sky, which was still a bit dark. As the sun began to rise, the view became breathtaking. After some time, Luna teleported them back to school, and it was now 7 a.m. Izuku informed the cats that he was going out briefly to avoid worrying them. He then teleported to a beach littered with trash, searching for useful items. He discovered a variety of things and left to see what he could create. He planned to build a device capable of breaking anything, just in case he was captured, and they used quirk-canceling devices on him. He also gathered leftover materials to make glitter and smoke bombs to annoy the heroes. Once he finished crafting, he cleaned himself up and played with the cats. By 10 a.m., he was contemplating more inventions for potential capture scenarios. Though he felt he was overthinking, he reassured himself that he would never allow that to happen. Seeking fresh air, he stood up, disguised himself, and teleported to an alley near Aldra Junior High. He decided to have some fun with a certain someone. Teleporting to the school's roof, he sat at the edge, waiting patiently for lunch. Finally, lunch arrived and he thought of a song. He heard the roof door open but didn't turn around, knowing who it was. He began to sing, and the other person remained silent. As he sang about feeling trapped and misunderstood, he reflected on the struggles he faced. He expressed his desire to avoid trouble, yet trouble always seemed to find him. He sang about the pain he endured and the challenges of dealing with bullies, revealing a deeper story of conflict and resilience. Suddenly, he heard the door open again and turned around to see 3 bullies. One of them demanded to know who he was. He remained silent, standing up to face them. Their anger shifted to confusion and then worry as he leaned back and fell off the roof, teleporting to the trash beach to walk around. After a few minutes, he found a secluded clearing where he could sit undisturbed. He pondered the heroes' relentless pursuit, feeling frustrated by their constant plans to capture him. He wished they would leave him alone, noting how their repeated failures only fueled their determination. Just then, Luna and Ragdoll appeared, startling him. They sat on either side of his head as he petted them. They explained they came to check on him. He reassured them that he was fine, just bored, and agreed when they offered to teleport them home. Upon arriving, the others rushed to him, and he sat down to play with them before eventually falling asleep. Meanwhile, Aizawa was preparing for another day of planning to catch Shadow, feeling exhausted by the ongoing chase. Right now, Izuku, All Might, Endeavor, Hawks, Present Mike, Midnight, Mirko, and Nizu were having a meeting about Shadow. Izuku felt that this plan was likely to fail like the others. If they wanted to catch him, they would need to devise better strategies and put in more effort. He noticed that Endeavor was not paying much attention, likely lost in his own thoughts about how to catch Shadow, which Izuku found frustrating. Nizu asked if everyone understood the plan, and everyone responded affirmatively except for Endeavor. After that, they went about their daily activities until it was time to put the plan into action. Time passed, and Izuku woke up, surprised to have had a good sleep for once. He wondered how long he had been asleep and checked the time. It was 11. It had been a long and refreshing nap, something he hadn't experienced in a while. He got up, prepared for patrol, left some food for the cats, and quietly jumped out the window. He hoped the heroes wouldn't spoil his mood. If they didn't, he might even refrain from pranking them. It was time to get to work. Meanwhile, Aizawa was waiting for All Might and Endeavor so they could leave and execute the plan. He leaned against Zashi, feeling annoyed at the delay. After waiting for 15 minutes, All Might and Endeavor finally arrived, and they could set the plan in motion. They took their positions, ready to start. Izuku sat on a random roof, listening for any cries for help, but heard nothing. He got up and ran around, realizing he might have overused his quirks but wouldn't face any drawbacks unless he pushed himself too far. Suddenly, he heard a scream and quickly turned invisible, rushing toward the sound. The heroes, disguised as villains, had approached a lady to assist with their plan. When they spotted Shadow, they initiated their strategy, causing the lady to scream. Shadow vanished into thin air, causing panic among the heroes, but they continued with their plan. Shadow scanned the area, unable to see if the lady was all right due to All Might blocking his view, unaware that they were the heroes. The lady pleaded to be let go, but All Might covered her mouth and demanded her money and jewelry. Shadow then jumped down, throwing a smoke bomb and seizing the lady while the heroes were distracted. He leaped onto the roof and became visible, only to freeze when he recognized her. It was Inko. Shaking his head, he continued, asking if she was okay. She assured him she was fine, and he teleported her around the corner, forgetting her identity, before jumping down behind All Might and accidentally knocking off his mask. Shadow saw All Might's face and jumped back, realizing the situation. He remarked that All Might would never give up on catching him. The heroes then revealed their true identities and prepared for a confrontation. All Might declared they would never give up, affirming their roles as heroes. Hawks launched his feathers at Shadow, but he dodged effortlessly. All Might followed with a powerful punch, striking Shadow and sending him crashing into a wall. Shadow stood up, instantly healing from the blow. Mirko attempted to kick him, but he teleported to her side and struck her stomach. Aizawa activated his quirk, but it had no effect on Shadow. Present Mic unleashed a sound wave, prompting Shadow to cover his ears. All Might seized the opportunity to capture him, but Shadow teleported to the roof just in time. Shadow expressed his frustration about the noise, and then he took off running, prompting the heroes to chase after him. Hawks soared through the air while the others pursued Shadow on foot. Aizawa and Midnight split off to try and corner him, while Endeavor launched fireballs, but Shadow skillfully dodged them. Endeavor shouted for him to stop playing around, to which Shadow retorted that he was a vigilante, not a villain. They approached the edge of the building, where there was a significant gap, and Shadow halted at the brink. The heroes surrounded him, demanding he surrender. Shadow insisted once more that he was a vigilante. Midnight attempted to put him to sleep with a gas, but he wore a gas mask, rendering her efforts ineffective. Mirko charged in to kick him, but he dodged and countered, causing her to stumble. All Might threw a punch, Endeavor launched fireballs, Aizawa sent his scarf, Present Mic unleashed another sound wave, and Hawks sent his feathers. Shadow skillfully evaded all their attacks, threw glitter bombs at them, and teleported to a building across the street, taunting them with a playful remark before escaping into an alleyway. Izuku finally found a moment to rest, feeling frustrated that the heroes didn't understand he was a vigilante, not a villain. It was now 4 a.m., so he teleported to his room at the school, feeling dizzy from the distance. He changed out of his suit, went to the cats to pet them, and fell asleep. Aizawa reflected on the failed attempt to capture Shadow once again. He and Zashi were at home, resting after the battle. Aizawa realized that Shadow had barely used his quirks during the encounter. Despite having an advantage, they had still failed. He sighed and went to bed. The next morning, Izuku thought about the previous night's events and how he really needed that nap. He decided to take it easy for the day, knowing the heroes might try to attack again that night. He wanted to be prepared but felt that resting was the best option, especially since the heroes' plans kept failing. He wondered if they even knew how to make effective plans. They can't, but a kid can. Pathetic. The boy got up to feed the cats, take a shower, and change into a disguise. Once he was ready, he teleported to an alleyway near the cat cafe he frequented. As he entered, people immediately recognized him. A lady exclaimed that he was the boy who had fought off a robber there months ago, and it seemed they still hadn't gotten over it. He approached the counter and ordered a black coffee, despite having just taken a nap. The counter lady smiled and said there was no need to pay, thanking him for saving them. He returned a fake smile and moved to sit down, feeling the weight of their gazes on him. He hated smiling, but it seemed necessary for now. Taking out his phone, he distracted himself while waiting. His attention drifted to two familiar figures watching him: Eraserhead and Present Mic. He knew he had to act quickly to avoid being followed. Turning back to his phone, he waited until his coffee arrived and then left, ensuring they weren't tailing him. Once he was sure he was alone, the smile faded. He decided it was time to get a new disguise if he wanted to avoid recognition, which he certainly did. After purchasing a new disguise and some cat food, he teleported home. He fed the cats and sat down at his desk, pondering what to do next. He suggested going to the park, and the cats eagerly ran to him. Without warning, Luna teleported them to a park not far from the school. He landed hard on his backside, and the cats looked at him, seemingly amused. He playfully exclaimed that she should have given him a warning. Laughing, he stood up and dusted himself off, but the cats had already dashed away, inviting him to chase them. He ran after them, and they played together for the rest of the day. After some time, he lay exhausted on the grass with the cats, reflecting on how much fun they had. He asked Ragdoll if she and the others had any abilities. She explained that they did, but they needed to unlock them through a specific action, which they didn't yet know. He expressed his excitement about their potential, assuring her that they would be powerful once they unlocked their abilities. She agreed, saying they could help him. With a smile, he suggested they head home. Luna teleported them back, and he made sure to give the cats food and water since they looked tired. He prepared for patrol, thinking it might be a good idea to start early. After checking that he had everything, he teleported to the roof of the tallest building, sitting at the edge and listening for any screams. He thought about throwing a glitter bomb at any heroes he encountered. They deserved it. Standing up, he teleported to another roof to continue his lookout. Suddenly, he sensed a presence and activated his voice changer. He called out to Hawks, knowing he was being followed. Hawks landed nearby, and they stood face to face. The boy teased him, calling him a chicken, to which Hawks responded that it was nothing he needed to know. The boy insisted he knew Hawks' past and urged him to stop pretending. Hawks looked stunned and cast his gaze downward. The boy continued, sharing that he understood what Hawks had been through and encouraged him to stand up for himself, reminding him that he was a hero. With that, he ran away, watching over the city. From Hawks' perspective, he was taken aback. The boy knew about him, yet he felt he knew nothing about the boy in return. He realized that the boy understood him, and he vowed to protect him, wanting to be his hero. Deciding to follow him for safety, Hawks opened his wings and soared into the sky. He spotted the boy sitting on the edge of a roof, and as he began to sing, the melody was beautiful. Life was all right in Devil Town, or so it seemed. No one was going to catch them now. Dad had bought a new car, and they felt secure. It was just another day, but there was tension in the air. Someone had said something foolish again, and it left a sour note. The parents weren't in love, but that was fine. They could settle for 2 birthdays. There were family problems, and Devil Town felt colder in the summertime. The weight of it all threatened to overwhelm, but holding hands offered a sense of comfort. Facing the unknown was still a little scary, but it felt safer with someone by their side. Falling didn't seem so bad when they knew they weren't alone in that experience. In the heart of Devil Town, there was a sense of resignation. Nothing could frighten them now. They were all in their pajamas, each with their own quirks. One was white and stroppy, while another was green and brown. There was a moment of forgetfulness, a name slipping from memory, but that was just a small detail. Spiders in favorite shoes were left undisturbed, as they were more afraid than anyone else. The chill of Devil Town lingered, and the cycle of losing one's mind repeated itself. But through it all, they held on tight, ready to face another night together. Suddenly, a figure stood up, questioning why they were still being followed. The tension hung in the air as they turned, landing awkwardly in front of him, chuckling nervously. He demanded a reason for the pursuit, and in response, he threw a glitter bomb. The playful banter continued, and with a quick decision, they flew away, realizing the need to be more cautious around him. Finally, they were alone again, relieved that the figure had left. He probably wanted to know where they lived, but that was a secret for another day. It was time to patrol and ignore the heroes. As fatigue set in from a long night of dealing with criminals, they teleported home and changed. Sitting at a desk, they played on their phone, trying to keep quiet as the cats slept. They planned to wait until the cats woke up before heading out for the day. Eventually, the cats stirred, and a cheerful greeting was exchanged. Plans were made to explore the city, but first, a quick stop was necessary. After donning a new disguise and grabbing some money, they teleported to a cat cafe, treating themselves to coffee and snacks for the cats. With a flick of magic, they were transported to a serene lake nestled in a forest near the school. Taking off shoes and socks, they dipped their feet in the cool water, sipping coffee as the cats played around them. Laughter filled the air as they joined in the fun. After a whirlwind of activity, they lay on the ground, exhausted but happy. It was time to head home. They stood up, putting on their shoes, while the cats remained sprawled out. Offering to carry them, they began the journey back, with Luna perched on their shoulder and the others finding cozy spots. Meanwhile, a meeting was taking place among the heroes regarding the mysterious figure known as Shadow. Discussions revealed that he had family issues and sometimes forgot his name, which raised concerns. They speculated about the reasons behind his vigilantism, deciding to gather more information without direct confrontation. As the meeting concluded, one hero wondered if they would encounter Shadow during the day. In another part of town, someone was eavesdropping on the meeting, feeling frustrated by the misconceptions about their identity. They had family issues, but forgetting their name was just part of a song lyric. It was amusing in a way, as they realized that when caught, they wouldn't need to reveal their name anyway. After the meeting, they hacked into various systems, searching for something to occupy their time. Frustration grew as boredom set in, leading them to the library for a coffee. As they wandered aimlessly, snippets of conversation caught their attention. People were discussing the vigilante Shadow, speculating about his motives. The rumors were unfounded, but they only fueled the fire of curiosity. The protagonist found themselves on a rooftop, a familiar spot where they often sought solace. Feeling inspired, they decided to sing, reflecting on their past experiences of being overlooked and misunderstood. They expressed their feelings about being different yet united with others who felt the same way, inviting those who felt lost and lonely to join them in a place where they could be accepted. Suddenly, a group of cats appeared, seemingly bored and looking for company. The protagonist welcomed them and suggested a game, playfully challenging them to catch up as they leaped from rooftop to rooftop. The cats, with their unique abilities, eagerly pursued the challenge. Meanwhile, a nearby observer, Hawks, was taken aback by the unusual scene unfolding before him. He witnessed the boys singing and the cats joining in the playful chase, leaving him questioning his sanity. Deciding to take a break from the chaos, he headed to a nearby fast food restaurant. Later that night, the protagonist found themselves back at home, with the cats peacefully sleeping. They wandered around the school, searching for something to occupy their time. Eventually, feeling exhausted, they teleported to their room and fell asleep. As the night progressed, Aizawa and his team prepared to confront the protagonist once again. Aizawa approached the rooftop where the protagonist often lingered, hoping for a chance to talk. However, the protagonist, feeling weary, dismissed Aizawa and jumped across the rooftops, seeking solitude. Once distanced from Aizawa, the protagonist gazed at the stars, contemplating the world's corruption. They listened for any signs of trouble but only noticed the heroes trailing behind them. Ready to face them, the protagonist called out, urging them to reveal themselves. Aizawa, Present Mike, Endeavor, and others emerged, surrounding the protagonist. The tension escalated as they urged the protagonist to surrender, but the protagonist defiantly challenged them, igniting a familiar confrontation. Endeavor launched fireballs, which the protagonist countered with shadows, showcasing their newfound abilities. The heroes attempted to subdue the protagonist with various attacks, but the protagonist skillfully evaded and countered, using shadows to shield themselves and retaliate. As the battle continued, the protagonist felt Aizawa's scarf wrap around their waist, momentarily restricting their movement. However, they quickly teleported behind Endeavor, delivering a swift kick. The fight raged on, with the protagonist reminding their pursuers that surrender was not an option. Aizawa reiterated that it would be easier if the protagonist simply gave up, but the protagonist remained resolute, determined to maintain their freedom. In a moment of reflection, the character found themselves in the bathroom, staring at their reflection in the mirror. They contemplated their life, feeling a sense of urgency as they awaited the inevitable. Despite the weight of their thoughts, they felt an unyielding spirit, determined to live countless lives. They attempted to exert control over their surroundings, managing to influence Present Mike, Midnight, and Endeavor. As their patience wore thin, they questioned the entertainment value of their situation. A surge of energy coursed through them, a feeling that made them lose control, yet they embraced the magic within. With newfound power, they directed their controlled allies to confront Aizawa, Hawks, and another hero. The atmosphere crackled with tension, reminiscent of a high-stakes battle. A sense of chaos enveloped them, but they pressed on even as their throat began to ache, signaling the strain of their abilities. As the conflict escalated, confusion reigned among the heroes. Suddenly, a fireball was hurled their way, but with a swift motion, they transformed it into ice, showcasing their unique talent. Endeavor expressed his disbelief, but the character chose to flee, evading their pursuers and seeking refuge in an alley. Contemplating their next move, they climbed to the rooftop, reflecting on their dreams and aspirations. They felt a mix of anxiety and hope, envisioning a future filled with possibilities. Despite the risk of invoking their abilities again, they felt compelled to sing, believing in the magic that resided within them. As they gazed into the depths of their mind, they navigated the complexities of their life, striving to silence the doubts that lingered. They sensed their grip on control slipping, yet they continued to push forward, determined to find their path. In a moment of clarity, they heard sounds nearby and called out, challenging the shadows. Hawks and Aizawa emerged, and the character instinctively assumed a defensive stance. Aizawa proposed a dialogue, while Hawks sought a peaceful resolution. The character, wary yet intrigued, agreed to converse if Hawks relinquished his feathers. With the tension easing, Aizawa delivered a surprising request from Nizu, asking the character to teach at UA. The character erupted in laughter, their reaction leaving the heroes bewildered as they contemplated the unexpected turn of events. I then stopped laughing and became serious. The question of why I should accept the request hung in the air. Hawks responded that they would have to force me to come with them. I challenged them to see if they could. Aizawa grabbed his scarf and aimed it at me while Hawks sent his feathers flying. I created a shadow shield and retaliated with shadow feathers directed at Hawks. In a swift move, I teleported behind Aizawa and attempted to punch him, but he blocked my attack. Suddenly, Luna and Ragdoll appeared beside me. Hawks was taken aback, questioning their presence. Izuku, concerned for my safety, asked if I was okay. I assured him I was fine and urged him to return home, explaining that it was dangerous here. The others then joined us, standing protectively in front of me. They insisted they were trying to help, and Izuku pleaded with me to let them assist just this once. I reluctantly agreed, reminding them to be careful. Mimi began to float toward Hawks, causing him to scream in surprise. Aizawa tried to catch me with his scarf, but Kiki intervened, using Black Whip to create a shield around me. I instructed Ragdoll to tell Kiki to retrieve Aizawa's scarf, and she quickly complied. I attempted to punch Aizawa again, but he blocked my strike and countered with a punch to my stomach, which I acknowledged with a remark about his skill. Hawks then swooped in, trying to grab me, but I used the shadows to pull him down. I trapped Aizawa in a shadow cage while Kiki successfully took his scarf with Mimi's help. I asked if I could leave, but Hawks insisted we weren't done yet. He got back up, wielding 2 feathers like swords, prompting me to create 2 shadow swords in response. I smirked and charged at him, but he continued to block my attacks, as if he didn't truly want to fight. Growing tired, I kicked him in the stomach, causing him to stumble back and release Aizawa. I told Ragdoll and the others they could go home, promising to see them later. Luna teleported them away, and I turned to leave, only to feel something sharp pierce my arm. I looked down to see a dart, realizing Hawks was standing there with a tranquilizer gun. Before I could teleport home, dizziness overwhelmed me and I collapsed. Just before I lost consciousness, I felt Hawks catch me and heard him say it was okay now, that they had me. Aizawa's perspective shifted as he noted they had finally caught me, grateful they had brought a tranquilizer gun. He and Hawks waited in the infirmary at UA for me to wake up. After an hour, I finally opened my eyes, regretting it immediately due to the bright light. I noticed 2 other people in the room and opened my eyes again, sitting up. Hawks greeted me cheerfully, and I took in my surroundings, realizing I was in the infirmary at UA. Frustration washed over me as I tried to use my quirk, only to find it wasn't working. I looked at my wrist and saw a quirk canceller strapped on. Thankfully, my mask was still in place. A knock at the door announced the arrival of my favorite detective, Tsukachi. He acknowledged Aizawa's success in capturing me and stated he would ask me some questions, urging me to be honest. I agreed but warned him I might not share everything. Tsukachi began with my name, but I refused to tell him. He moved on to my age and I answered truthfully, stating I was 14. He inquired about my reasons for becoming a vigilante, and I explained my desire to become a hero and prove the current heroes wrong. When he asked about my home life, I hesitated before lying and saying there were no problems. Tsukachi noted my hesitation, sensing there was more to my story. After finishing his questions, he took his leave, wishing Aizawa and Hawks a good night. I wondered where I would end up next, asking if I was going to prison. Aizawa reminded me that I was underage, expressing his disbelief that he had been chasing a 14-year-old for nearly 2 years. I found amusement in his predicament. Hawks, sensing the tension, mentioned I would be with Aizawa, which surprised him. Aizawa sighed and settled into his sleeping bag. Hawks informed me I would be able to leave the next day before departing, leaving me alone with Aizawa, who was asleep on the floor. I decided to try to sleep, though I struggled with insomnia, wishing for rest. As morning approached, Aizawa woke up and was startled to find me staring at him. I asked how long he had been awake, and he mentioned he had been awake since last night, noting our shared struggle with insomnia. He explained he just needed to sign some papers before we could leave. Once Aizawa left the room, I contemplated my missed opportunity to escape while he slept. I looked around for a way out and spotted a window. However, when I tried to open it, I found it locked, leaving me frustrated. All of a sudden, something wrapped around Aizawa's waist. He had anticipated an escape attempt. A sigh escaped me as I turned to face him, requesting to be released. He complied, tossing some clothes my way and instructing me to put them on before we left. After changing, I emerged with my mask still on. Aizawa asked if I could take it off, but I insisted that it would remain. He then wrapped his scarf around me, effectively guiding me to the car, and the entire drive to his home was enveloped in silence. Upon arriving, Aizawa opened the door to their modest house, only to be tackled to the ground by Present Mike. Their reunion was loud and chaotic, and I remarked on how I thought I might now be deaf. Once they stood up, Present Mike turned to me, curious about my presence. Aizawa explained that I was a problem child he was watching over. I questioned whether we would stand outside all day or head inside. We entered, and I simply collapsed onto the floor, overwhelmed by my thoughts. Aizawa inquired about my behavior, to which I replied that I was reflecting on my life. Aizawa introduced Present Mike as Hizashi, his husband. Hizashi looked at me and then turned to Aizawa, asking who I was and what I was doing there. Aizawa explained that I was Shadow, whom he had adopted. I was taken aback, expressing my disbelief that I had been adopted when I thought Aizawa was merely looking after me. Just then, a boy came downstairs, asking if Dad was home and then questioning my identity. Present Mike awkwardly introduced me as Shinso's brother. I protested, insisting that I had not agreed to this arrangement. Aizawa reminded me that I had no choice in the matter. Aizawa then introduced Shinso, and I was informed that Shinso would show me to the spare room. He led me to my new room, explaining that if I needed anything, he was in the room next to mine. After he left, I searched my pockets for my lock breaker and successfully disabled the quirk canceller. The thought of escaping crossed my mind, but I also considered the possibility of staying. I wouldn't have to live in an abandoned school anymore, and I could sneak out to patrol. For now, I decided to gather my belongings. I teleported back to the school, only to be greeted by the cats that jumped on me, causing me to stumble. I wondered where Izuku was. I explained that I had been captured but was fine now, and I had come to retrieve my things because I was moving in with Aizawa and Present Mike. The cats were visibly upset, and I reassured them that I wasn't leaving them behind. They quickly ran to me, and I teleported to my new room, bracing myself for the chaos that lay ahead. After a couple of hours of contemplation in my room, I was still trying to figure out how to explain my belongings being there. I had also managed to find a way to reattach the quirk canceller. A knock at my door prompted me to put my mask on before inviting whoever it was to enter. Aizawa and Hizashi walked in, surprised by the sight of my possessions. Present Mike asked where I had gotten everything, and I pointed to Luna. Aizawa seemed tempted to pet the cats but held back. He inquired about their origins and my belongings. I summarized that they had quirks, teleported to me, and brought my stuff along. Aizawa then asked for my full name, but I refused to share it. He decided not to press the issue further. Hizashi announced that dinner was ready, and they left the room. I sighed in relief, grateful that they had bought my story. I got up and headed downstairs, where all eyes turned to me as I entered the room. Hizashi pointed out that I was still wearing my mask, prompting me to remove it, feeling slightly annoyed by their eagerness to see my face. I asked if we could eat now, and after a brief pause, we began our meal. Later that night, I found myself once again in my room, struggling to fall asleep. It seemed impossible to drift off, so I resolved to try, even though I knew it would be difficult. Meanwhile, Aizawa was buried in paperwork, feeling the weight of a headache. He needed coffee. Hizashi entered with 2 cups and handed one to him, acknowledging that he had read Aizawa's mind. Aizawa shared that he was reviewing reports of bodies found in the abandoned part of Hosu, hoping they would quickly find the culprit. Hizashi informed him that Shinso had just woken up, but Izuku was still in his room. Aizawa decided to check on him. He knocked on the door, but there was no response. After a second knock yielded the same result, he opened the door to find Izuku and the cats asleep. It seemed Izuku had only recently fallen asleep. Closing the door quietly, Aizawa returned to his room, where Hizashi awaited him. When asked about Izuku, Aizawa confirmed that he was still asleep. Just then his phone rang. He answered, recognizing the voice of Nizu, the principal of UA. Nizu inquired about the captured vigilante, and Aizawa confirmed that he had indeed caught him. Nizu requested that Aizawa bring the vigilante to UA for a discussion, to which Aizawa agreed. Nizu informed that he would see them in a few hours, which was a rare moment of formality for him. After hanging up, a sigh escaped me. Zashi inquired about the call, and I explained that Nizu wanted to have a chat with Izuku. Zashi wondered why and offered to wake Izuku up. I instructed him not to reveal where we were taking Izuku and to let Shinso know we would be back shortly. He nodded and left, while I continued with my work. Izuku's perspective shifted as he woke up to someone shaking him, an unpleasant sensation. He reluctantly acknowledged his awakening and glared at Hizashi, the one responsible for waking him. Hizashi apologized for the disturbance and mentioned they wanted Izuku to meet someone for a chat. Curious, Izuku asked where they were going. Hizashi assured him he would see soon and added that he had made breakfast. After Hizashi left, Izuku got out of bed, wondering who he would be meeting. Time passed, and Izuku reflected on the breakfast he had just endured, which had been quite terrible. Fortunately, Aizawa had prepared a much better meal afterward. As they drove to an unknown destination, the atmosphere was silent, and Izuku eventually fell asleep again. He was roused once more by Hizashi announcing their arrival. Stepping out of the car, Izuku was taken aback to find himself at UA. Confused, he followed Aizawa and Hizashi inside. They stopped in front of a door, and Aizawa knocked until a voice invited them in. Upon entering, Izuku was greeted by Nizu, the principal of UA, which surprised him. Nizu welcomed him and requested that Hizashi and Aizawa leave for their conversation. Once alone, Nizu gestured for Izuku to take a seat and explained that he wanted Izuku to attend UA. Izuku was taken aback, questioning the decision to allow a vigilante, especially one so young, into the school. Nizu reassured him that there were only 10 months until the entrance exams, so he saw no issue. Sensing there was more to the offer, Izuku asked about the catch. Nizu proposed that if Izuku protected his class, he might be able to continue his patrols, but only with a pro-hero by his side. After considering the terms, Izuku agreed, finding it a reasonable deal. Nizu then suggested a game of chess, and they played for several hours, with Izuku winning every round until it was time to leave. On the way back home, Izuku stared out the window, lost in thought. Aizawa asked about his conversation with Nizu, and Izuku confirmed that he would be attending UA. Hizashi expressed excitement about the prospect of him becoming a great hero, while Izuku pondered who would be in his class, feeling a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Fast forward to the entrance exam, Izuku had spent the last 10 months training and continued his patrols. He had formed a bond with Shinso and affectionately referred to Aizawa and Hizashi as Dadzawa and Papa Mike. On the morning of the exam, he found it difficult to sleep and waited for his alarm to ring. When it finally did, he got up, ignoring the pain in his ribs from a recent patrol encounter, and prepared for the day. After making breakfast for everyone, he joined them at the dining table. Following breakfast, he and Shinso entered UA discreetly, aiming to keep their connection to Aizawa and Hizashi under wraps. They headed to the room for the written exam, where Izuku found a spot in the last row and soon fell asleep. He was jolted awake by someone yelling about a mistake in the exam materials. Annoyed, he glared at the source of the interruption, a student who seemed overly serious. The student voiced concerns about an error in the villain types listed on the exam. Izuku, frustrated, stood up to defend the situation, pointing out that the instructor would have clarified everything if not for the interruption. He apologized to present Mike and sat back down, trying to catch some more sleep. Noticing Bakugou next to him added to his anxiety, but he reminded himself to act normal. After the instructions were given, the written exam began. Izuku completed his in just 40 minutes and decided to take a nap in the teacher's lounge. He woke up just before the physical exam was set to start and decided to grab some coffee to energize himself. After finishing his drink, he headed to Battle Center B to prepare. As the gates opened, he ran through, feeling pumped and ready for the challenge ahead. A few people were saying that someone was cheating, and Papa Mike mentioned something about a countdown. They were definitely not prepared for what was coming, but that didn't concern me. I was ready to get this over with. I began taking down the robots effortlessly, and I guessed I had already destroyed over 100. Deciding to take a break, I teleported to a rooftop to observe the others. Dadzawa was in the spectator room with the other heroes, keeping a close watch on Izuku. He was impressed by the number of points Izuku had accumulated. Indehor pointed at Izuku, questioning why he wasn't actively participating in the exam. Dadzawa informed him that Izuku was taking a break to give others a chance to score points. Indehor's eyes widened when he saw Izuku's score, likely realizing it was higher than his son's. All Might expressed surprise that Dadzawa had a son, to which Dadzawa replied that he hadn't thought it necessary to mention it. Nizu, with a grin on his face, seemed to have something in mind. He pressed a red button, and the 0-pointer emerged. Izuku was contemplating taking a nap when the ground began to shake, signaling the arrival of the 0-pointer. He considered walking away, but a scream interrupted his thoughts. He quickly searched for the source and found a girl trapped under rubble, with the 0-pointer poised to step on her. He couldn't just walk away now. In a flash, he teleported next to her, using his powers to lift the rubble off her and teleport her to safety. Just as the robot was about to crush him, he activated his error ability, causing the robot to stumble backward. Papa Mike announced that time was up, and Izuku rushed back to the girl. He asked if she was okay and if she was hurt. She replied that she was fine but had sprained her ankle. He picked her up and started walking toward Recovery Girl, ignoring her protests that she could walk. Once they reached Recovery Girl, he set her down, but she grabbed his arm to thank him for saving her. He responded casually before teleporting to the teacher's lounge and falling asleep. A week later, Izuku was peacefully sleeping, exhausted from the previous night, when Papa Mike burst into his room, announcing that his letter had arrived. Startled, Izuku fell out of bed and took a fighting stance. Papa Mike awkwardly laughed and handed him the letter, pulling him downstairs to join the others at the dining table, where Shin was also waiting with his letter. They decided to open their letters together, and as they did, a disc fell out, projecting a message from All Might. Izuku felt a cringe coming on as All Might greeted him in a suit, looking no different from usual. All Might informed him that he had achieved 40 villain points and questioned how a hero course could reject someone who saved others. He continued, stating that Izuku had also earned 60 rescue points, acknowledging the difficulty of the exam. All Might concluded by welcoming Izuku to Hero Academia. The disc turned off, and Izuku wasn't surprised by his points. Shin expressed frustration that he only received a letter while Izuku got a disc. When asked about his letter, Shin revealed he had been accepted, prompting Papa Mike to suggest a celebration for both of them. They spent the rest of the day celebrating, enjoying a level of fun Izuku hadn't experienced in a while. On the first day at UA, Izuku found himself struggling with insomnia. After getting dressed, he went downstairs for coffee, where he found Shin and Dadzawa, both looking equally tired. They shared their lack of sleep before Izuku made breakfast for everyone. Mike came down, laughing at their tired appearances, but Izuku ignored him as he finished his meal and prepared to leave. Later, on his way to class with Shin, Izuku felt overwhelmed by the size of UA. Although he had been there before, it still felt immense. When they finally located their classroom, Izuku felt a strong urge to turn back. Instead, he decided to teleport inside, landing behind Dadzawa's desk. He wished he had one of the cats with him and hoped his classmates wouldn't notice him as he fell asleep, enjoying the brief respite despite the noise around him. Dadzawa, meanwhile, was making his way to class in his sleeping bag, hoping this year would be free of troublesome students. As he approached the classroom door, he interrupted a conversation, advising the students to find another place to socialize, reminding them that this was the hero course. Climbing out of his sleeping bag, he entered the classroom and noted that it took only 8 seconds for the students to quiet down. He introduced himself as their homeroom teacher, showed Aizawa, and noticed that Izuku was absent. He exchanged a confused glance with Shinso, who pointed to his desk. Izuku found himself asleep behind his desk, a problem child indeed. He gently tapped him to wake him up, reminding him that class was starting. Izuku nodded, emerging from his hiding spot and making his way to his seat behind Bakugou, who he didn't recognize but felt oddly familiar. A girl in the class wondered where he had come from, while a boy questioned how long he had been there. The teacher, using his quirk, silenced them with a simple command. The atmosphere shifted to one of quiet anticipation as the teacher handed out gym clothes, instructing the students to head out to the field. The others rushed out, but Izuku and Shinso took their time, walking at a leisurely pace. As they approached the changing rooms, Izuku realized he needed to find a way to hide his scars. He decided to wait until everyone else had left before changing. Inside the empty room, they quickly changed and made their way to the field. Shinso remarked that Izuku had intentionally avoided showing his scars to the others. Izuku considered this, unsure if it would matter. Upon reaching the field, their teacher began explaining the day's activities. They were to participate in a quirk assessment test, which surprised the class. Izuku noted the unnecessary volume of their reactions, recalling that they had done similar tests in junior high. The teacher dismissed their concerns about the entrance ceremony, emphasizing that becoming a hero required focus and dedication. He explained that physical fitness tests were conducted without the use of quirks, a practice that seemed outdated. When he called on Izuku, asking about his best result for the softball throw, Izuku recalled a distance he had made up. The teacher then encouraged him to try again using his quirk. As the ball was thrown to him, Izuku caught it and stood in the circle, feeling the pressure from Katsuki's glare. He decided to teleport the ball far from the school instead of showing off. The teacher announced the impressive distance, leaving the class in awe. Izuku felt the shift in perception, realizing he had become an unexpected rival. The tests continued, with Katsuki taking first place, Izuku second, and Todoroki third. After changing back, Izuku took his time alongside Shinso, and the school day finally came to an end. He looked forward to some much-needed rest and time with his cats. The next day, Izuku trudged to class, exhausted from lack of sleep. Upon entering, he sat down with a sigh, noticing that Shinso had gone to speak with the teacher. He found himself daydreaming about his cats, wishing he could join them in their peaceful slumber. At lunch, he sought solitude on the roof, hoping to avoid any unwanted conversations. Just as he settled down, Kirishima unexpectedly joined him, greeting him with a cheerful nickname. Izuku was taken aback but soon learned that Kirishima had brought lunch to share. They ate in silence until the bell rang. Izuku mentioned that Kirishima didn't have to sit with him, but Kirishima insisted it was fine. They hurried back to class, where Izuku used his quirk to teleport them closer, noticing Kirishima's face turning red from the sudden closeness. Once in class, their teacher announced the start of hero basic training but revealed he wouldn't be leading it. Izuku felt a sense of dread as he anticipated who would take over. The door swung open, and his suspicions were confirmed when All Might entered, announcing his presence in a dramatic fashion. The class was instructed to put on their hero costumes and meet at ground beta. Izuku headed to the changing room, where he found it empty. Opening his case, he discovered a note atop what appeared to be a new suit. It seemed May had taken the liberty of preparing something special for him. The note read that the suit was just for him, leaving Izuku curious about what awaited him in this new chapter of his hero journey. If someone wanted changes, they could simply ask. Mei looked at the suit, realizing it wasn't her style, but it would work for now. After changing, she rushed to ground beta, arriving just in time. All Might greeted her, urging everyone to gather around him, though she preferred to stand at the back. Kirishima joined her, encouraging her to move closer, but she politely declined, saying she was fine where she was. As the class listened, All Might explained the upcoming battles. They would be split into villains and heroes, engaging in 2-on-2 indoor matches. Kirishima stood beside Mei, slightly flustered as All Might continued, detailing the rules. The heroes needed to locate and dispose of a hidden nuclear weapon, while the villains had to protect it or capture the heroes. Teams were drawn from a box, and the matchups were set. Mei found herself paired against Bakugou, feeling it was fate. She was eager to demonstrate her growth. As the teams were announced, All Might instructed them to strategize. Mei and Uraraka quickly devised a plan, with Mei intending to distract Bakugou while Uraraka searched for the bomb. When the signal was given, they entered the arena, immediately hearing explosions in the distance. Mei directed Uraraka to head up to the last floor, while she moved toward the source of the noise, smirking at the challenge ahead. Bakugou charged at Izuku, who stood still, anticipating the attack. Just before Bakugou unleashed his explosion, Izuku teleported behind him and delivered a swift kick, sending Bakugou to the ground. Izuku taunted Bakugou, who retaliated with multiple explosions, but Izuku evaded, claiming Bakugou was losing his edge. As Bakugou prepared for another attack, Uraraka called out, needing guidance on what to do with the bomb. Bakugou pursued Izuku, who cleverly teleported to safety. While distracted by Uraraka, Bakugou managed to land a hit on Izuku, who quickly recovered, revealing his secret abilities. Bakugou, now more determined, brandished his gauntlets, threatening a massive explosion that could endanger everyone. All Might shouted a warning, but Bakugou insisted on testing Izuku's limits. He pulled the trigger, unleashing a powerful blast, but Izuku redirected the force upward, signaling Uraraka to act. Uraraka used her quirk to launch debris at Ida, catching him off guard. She then floated to the nuclear weapon, securing victory for the hero team. All Might announced their win, and while Uraraka celebrated, Izuku stood over Bakugou with a confident smirk, acknowledging his victory before joining the rest of the class. After the matches concluded, they changed and returned to class. As the day wrapped up, Izuku was approached by Kirishima, who invited him to hang out. Izuku agreed, and they set a time for Friday after school. He teleported to the staff room to avoid the crowd and laid down, contemplating his decision. Later that night, as he prepared for his patrol, he waited for the clock to strike 11. Once it did, he teleported to a nearby building, observing the quiet streets. With few people around, he anticipated a calm night ahead, especially with school awaiting him the next day. Izuku planned to sleep during class, confident that his father, who knew he was on patrol, wouldn't mind. As he was about to walk away, he heard shouting and decided to investigate. To his surprise, he found Kirishima cornered in an alley. A man was demanding money from Kirishima, who stammered that he had none. The situation escalated as the man prepared to strike. In a flash, Izuku teleported in front of Kirishima, delivering a swift punch to the man's stomach followed by a kick to his face, incapacitating him. He turned to Kirishima, checking if he was okay. Kirishima expressed his gratitude, and Izuku used his shadow manipulation to tie up the attacker. He asked Kirishima if he had a phone, to which Kirishima replied affirmatively. Izuku instructed him to call the police and assured him he would keep watch from above. Once on the roof, he sat and waited for the sirens. As they approached, he stood to leave, but Kirishima called out to thank him again. Izuku waved casually and dashed away. This marked the third time he had saved someone from his class. He had previously helped Uraraka and Denki before entering UA. He wondered what Kirishima was doing out at that hour. Ignoring the question, he continued his patrol, assisting others in need. When his shift ended, he teleported home and lay in bed, but insomnia kept him awake. His cats jumped onto the bed and curled up next to him, quickly falling asleep as he rubbed them. When the sun rose, he decided to get up and make the most of his day. He teleported to the beach, enjoying the sunrise until Hawks unexpectedly lifted him off the ground. Izuku protested, asking to be put down. Hawks greeted him cheerfully, teasing that he was just checking on him. Izuku teleported back to the ground, facing Hawks, who smiled at him. Hawks explained that it was hard to keep an eye on him with his teleportation abilities. Izuku shrugged and began to walk away, while Hawks called out that he would see him at UA before flying off. Izuku made his way to UA, anticipating Hawks' arrival at the school. Once there, he headed to the teacher's lounge to inform his father of his whereabouts, hoping to alleviate any worries. After receiving a brief scolding, he went to his class and sat at his desk, gazing out the window. A sudden wave of despair washed over him, leaving him feeling overwhelmed. Minutes later, more classmates entered, their loud chatter only adding to his irritation. Seeking peace, he teleported to the school roof to calm down. He felt irritated, angry, and exhausted, but he reminded himself to stay calm. After some time, he reluctantly returned to class, teleporting back to his desk as if nothing had happened. When his father finally arrived, he had an announcement for the class. Before starting, he assigned them a task, to choose a class president while keeping the noise down, only waking him if there was an emergency or when they were finished. He then settled into his sleeping bag, leaving Ida and Momo to take charge. Momo asked who would be the class president, and the room erupted with eager voices. Annoyed by the commotion, Izuku rested his head on his desk, pretending to sleep to avoid the chaos. Eventually, they decided on Ida as their class president, waking both Izuku and his father to continue with the lesson. After a grueling class, break time finally arrived. Izuku teleported to the roof, feeling exhausted. To combat his boredom, he began to sing, hoping to lift his spirits and distract himself from the earlier feelings of despair. Chasing the feeling of sneaking out in the evening, Izuku wondered where he would meet someone special. If only love were that easy. Time moved quickly and they tried to make the most of it. Trusting broken clocks, they wasted the daytime until night fell, making excuses when they had too much to. Bad days turned into moments that felt insufficient, and they dreaded the problems they didn't want to face. Worst case, they would just blame it on growing up. They couldn't have it all, so they might as well do too much. Izuku resolved not to let go, wanting to take control through all the detours. He chased those highs, hoping to make a promise that they could do it all together. Once he finished his thoughts, he looked up at the sky to relax. Suddenly, he heard a noise behind him and instinctively reached for his dagger, hidden in his pocket, ready to throw it toward the sound until he recognized who it was. Kirishima, with a sheepish grin, apologized for startling him and asked why he had a dagger. Izuku explained that he kept it just in case something bad happened. Kirishima complimented him on his nice voice, causing Izuku to blush slightly, though it wasn't noticeable. He stood up, reflecting on how he used to feel defeated in middle school until he decided to become a vigilante. Kirishima waved his hand in front of Izuku's face, snapping him out of his trance. Concerned, he asked if Izuku was okay since he had been spacing out a lot. Izuku reassured him that it was nothing to worry about. The bell rang and they headed to class, where the noise was overwhelming. Izuku stood by the door, contemplating an escape back to how things were before he was captured. Kirishima noticed his distraction and asked if he was alright, to which Izuku explained it was just a drawback of his quirk. As he tried to sit down, someone shouted his name, prompting him to run away from the source of the noise. Hawks called after him, and Ida reprimanded them for running in the hall. Izuku dashed up to the roof, hoping to shake off the irritating feeling that had settled in. Meanwhile, Hawks flew after him, confused about why Izuku was running away. When they reached the roof, Izuku stopped at the edge, reminiscing about how they had first met and suggesting they relive that moment. He leaned back, pretending to fall, but before he could reach the ground, he vanished. Hawks called out for him, worried. Izuku reassured him that he was fine and right behind him. When Hawks turned around, Izuku hugged him, causing Hawks to freeze in surprise. After a moment, Izuku pushed Hawks away, looking as if he might cry. He expressed his frustration, revealing that he felt no one cared about him and that he had been treated poorly since childhood. He had considered giving up but had found a new purpose in becoming something other than a hero. As he cried, Izuku glitched, and Hawks approached him, offering comfort. He reminded Izuku that there were people who cared about him and that they were there for him. Izuku thanked Hawks, feeling a bit better. Hawks then asked why Izuku had jumped off the roof. Izuku explained that he had felt an overwhelming urge to do so, which had driven him crazy. Hawks urged him to come to him or one of his dads if he felt that way again. Izuku apologized for worrying him, and Hawks reassured him that it was okay. They needed to get back to class, and Izuku decided to teleport them there. Before entering, Izuku cleaned himself up and walked in first. Aizawa immediately questioned his whereabouts. Izuku anticipated that Hawks would explain after class, and as he took his seat, he noticed Aizawa glaring at him, feeling a sense of dread about what would happen next. As the class began, Aizawa announced that they would be doing rescue training, which would take place off-campus. He instructed everyone to put on their hero suits, which emerged from the wall in a case. The students prepared for the upcoming training, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As preparations were underway, a sense of unease settled over Izuku, but he tried to dismiss it. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He contemplated the possibility of being followed or attacked and considered confiding in his dad or making an excuse to stay behind. Once he finished getting ready, he approached his father, who was waiting outside the bus. There stood Aizawa, clearly impatient. He informed Izuku that he was the last one they were waiting for and urged him to board so they could leave. Izuku hesitated, expressing his concern about a bad feeling he had. Aizawa dismissed his worries, insisting that he get on the bus. Frustrated, Izuku felt a glitch in his demeanor, questioning why his dad couldn't trust him. With a determined thought, he decided to teleport to his room before Aizawa could restrain him. He quickly changed into his vigilante costume and teleported to the roof of the bus, waiting for their arrival at the destination. When they finally stopped, Izuku recognized the location as USJ. Relief washed over him at the thought of avoiding the lengthy explanations that would have bored him to tears. Before the class disembarked, he teleported to the roof of the building to survey the area for anything unusual. Meanwhile, Aizawa contemplated giving Izuku house arrest upon their return. He was relieved that the class believed Izuku was unwell. As they entered the building, Aizawa approached 13 to inquire about All Might's absence. 13 explained that All Might had been delayed by another matter. As Aizawa leaned against the wall, listening to 13's explanation, he noticed something purple materializing in the center of the building. Suddenly, figures began to emerge, prompting him to prepare for action. Kirishima, noticing the commotion, questioned if the exercise had already begun. Aizawa quickly ordered everyone to stay back and not move. Izuku, observing the scene, recognized the threat and prepared to act. He teleported next to the leader of the emerging group, surprising everyone, and struck him. The leader, Shigaraki, identified Izuku as the vigilante and commanded a monstrous creature, a Nomu, to attack him. Izuku utilized his ability to weaken the Nomu's arm, causing it to scream in pain. As it began to regenerate, he used his power again, erasing the creature entirely and swiftly dealing with the other villains. Shigaraki, frustrated, attempted to use his quirk on Izuku but found it ineffective. Izuku teleported away from Shigaraki's grasp to assist Aizawa, reminding him that he had warned him about the impending danger. Aizawa urged Izuku to focus on the fight rather than talk. Izuku turned to see his classmates engaged with Kurogiri. Noticing Aizawa was handling himself, he teleported to assist his classmates, using his shadow manipulation to pull them away from Kurogiri's grasp. He instructed Ida to warn the pro-heroes of their situation, emphasizing the urgency of the moment. Ida, confused but with no other option, used his quirk to escape before Kurogiri could trap him. As Kurogiri teleported the rest of the class away, Izuku found himself submerged in water, surrounded by villains. Just then, Tsu and Mineta appeared, pulling him to safety. Grateful for their help, Izuku quickly devised a plan. He reassured them that he was there to stop the villains, instructing Mineta to use his quirk at the right moment and directing Tsu to take Mineta to safety while he assisted Aizawa. They nodded in agreement, and Izuku prepared for action. Closing his eyes, he teleported rocks above the villains, signaling Mineta to act. As Tsu and Mineta moved to hide, Izuku teleported to Aizawa's side, witnessing him being overwhelmed by a stronger Nomu. Determined, Izuku called out to the creature, diverting its attention. As it charged at him, he turned invisible and attempted to weaken its arm, but the Nomu sensed him and struck him against the wall. Struggling to rise, Izuku's mask fell off, but he refused to give up. Gathering his remaining strength, he charged at the Nomu, wrapping his legs around its neck and using his ability on its exposed brain, hoping this would be the key to victory. The Nomu screeched in response, and although it managed to throw Izuku, he teleported back to the ground just in time to prepare for the next move. The Nomu began to regenerate again. Ice formed around its legs as Todoroki, Kirishima, and Bakugou rushed toward it. Kirishima urged them to take action while they held it down. With a quick teleportation, Izuku appeared on top of the creature, using his quirk to manipulate shadows and strike at its brain, attempting to dismantle its body for the third time. Just then, the heroes burst through the door, including All Might. The remaining villains started to retreat. While they were distracted, Izuku quickly finished off the Nomu and landed on the ground, stumbling slightly. His regenerating quirk activated, helping him recover. Kirishima rushed to Izuku, expressing concern for his well-being. Izuku reassured him that he was fine but immediately asked about Aizawa's whereabouts. Todoroki informed him that Aizawa was with the others. Izuku sighed, realizing that the villains had escaped. Bakugou approached Izuku, grabbing him by the collar with tears in his eyes, demanding to know why Izuku had disappeared. Izuku, feeling overwhelmed, suggested they not discuss it there. He began to feel a headache, a sign of his quirk's drawback. Teleporting out of Bakugou's grip, he saw All Might approaching him, fully aware of his identity as Shadow. Izuku explained that he had no choice but to reveal himself. Kirishima was surprised to learn that All Might knew Izuku was the Vigilante. Izuku decided to go check on his father, teleporting to find him being taken away by an ambulance. His father expressed concern for Izuku's well-being, but Izuku was more worried about his dad. As Izuku turned, he saw his classmates running toward him, demanding to know why he had never told them he was the Vigilante. They questioned his choice to become a Vigilante, but Izuku insisted it was not their business. He felt a fever coming on from overusing his quirk and confirmed it when Shinso checked his forehead. Shinso scolded him for overexerting himself, but Izuku defended his actions, stating that he had to act quickly to protect his father. Izuku decided to rest on the bus while the others were busy. He informed his father that he needed to rest due to the drawback of his quirk. His father noticed Izuku's flushed face and allowed him to go ahead and rest. After a while, Izuku woke up in the infirmary, surrounded by cats. He was surprised to see them there. Recovery Girl entered, greeting him and asking if he felt better. Izuku confirmed he was feeling better, and his father soon followed, checking on him. After learning he had only been asleep for an hour or two, Izuku asked about the cat's arrival. His father mentioned they needed to get ready to leave, and Recovery Girl provided him with clothes and some gummies. Once dressed, they headed home. Izuku immediately went to his room, feeling restless and unable to sleep. Ragdoll jumped onto his bed, sensing his distress. Izuku confided in her about his father's hospitalization and his feelings of guilt. Ragdoll reassured him that he had done everything he could to save his dad. Unable to sleep, Izuku decided to go on patrol once the clock hit 10. After dealing with a few crimes, he returned home but still couldn't sleep. While scrolling through his phone, he stumbled upon news that revealed his identity as the Vigilante Shadow. Panic set in as he realized the implications of being exposed. He feared for his safety and that of his family. After calming down, Izuku prepared breakfast and called his friends. They drove to the hospital to visit his father, with Izuku keeping a low profile to avoid drawing attention. As they drove, Izuku stared out the window, feeling detached from the situation. Shinso placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, offering a small smile. Upon arriving at the hospital, Izuku pulled his hood over his head to remain inconspicuous. After registering, they headed to his father's room. Izuku struggled with feelings of guilt, questioning whether he deserved to be there after feeling powerless to help his dad. As they stood outside the room, his father turned to him and Shinso, asking if they wanted to go in first. Shinso encouraged Izuku to go ahead, and with a hesitant heart, Izuku entered the room, steeling himself to face his father. After staring at him for a moment, Izuku walked over and sat in one of the chairs next to the bed, holding his hand. He felt a wave of guilt wash over him, wishing he could have done more to prevent this situation. Tears threatened to spill from his eyes, but he held them back. The silence was broken when the door opened, revealing Shinso and his father. "Are you okay, little listener?" his father asked gently. Izuku felt the weight of his own blame. He believed it was his fault that his father was in this condition. "No, it's not your fault," Shinso interjected, shaking his head. "You couldn't have stopped this from happening. Dad wouldn't want you to blame yourself." Izuku managed a small chuckle, and Shinso embraced him, with their father joining in the hug. A week had passed since the incident at USJ, and the time off from school had not been kind to Izuku. He found himself retreating to his room, only emerging when it was time to visit his father. He had lost his appetite and struggled to sleep. "Izuku, you need to eat and sleep," Shinso urged, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine," Izuku replied, still staring at the ceiling. Shinso remained close, watching him carefully. "You sure about that? It doesn't look like it." Izuku continued to gaze upwards until Shinso wrapped his arms around him. He returned the hug, but when they pulled apart, Shinso's worried expression remained. "Izuku, you really need to eat. I can barely feel your ribs," Shinso said. Reluctantly, Izuku agreed to eat. "Fine, I'll eat. You can wait here. I'll get you something," Shinso offered before leaving the room. Izuku sat up, thinking about his father, who was likely staring at a picture of them together. His father had been struggling too, but he always tried to lift Izuku's spirits, which had worked a few times. Shinso returned with a bowl of katsudon. "Papa made this for you. You know why?" Izuku giggled and accepted the food. "Tell Papa I say thanks." "Will do. Now eat up before it gets cold," Shinso encouraged. Izuku complied, enjoying the meal even if it wasn't quite like his father's cooking. After finishing, he realized they had to return to UA the next day, a thought that filled him with dread. Just as he finished eating, his father entered the room, looking as if he might cry at any moment. "What happened?" Izuku asked, concerned. "Shota's awake. Get ready, we're going to see him," his father exclaimed before leaving the room. Izuku felt a rush of relief and happiness. He quickly got ready and joined his father and Shinso at the door. They got into the car, and as they drove, Luna appeared, settling in Izuku's lap. "What's she doing here?" Shinso asked, surprised. "I don't know," Izuku replied, puzzled. They soon arrived at the hospital, and Izuku felt a mix of excitement and anxiety about seeing his father. What if he was angry? What if he blamed Izuku for everything that had happened? "You okay, Izuku?" Shinso asked, noticing his apprehension. "Why, I'm okay," Izuku replied, though his heart raced. Before long, they stood outside his father's room. His father entered first, and Izuku followed closely behind. When they stepped inside, they found his father gazing out the window, looking bored. "Shota!" his father exclaimed, rushing forward. In an instant, his father was enveloped in a tight embrace, and Izuku felt a wave of warmth wash over him. "Glad to see you're awake," Shinso said, smiling as he hugged his father. Izuku stood there, feeling a mix of emotions. His father turned to him, concern etched on his face. "What happened to you? You look like you haven't eaten or slept in days," his father observed. Izuku looked away, unable to meet his father's gaze. "Come here," his father said softly. Hesitantly, Izuku walked over. When he was close enough, his father pulled him into a hug. It was unexpected, and Izuku found himself breaking down in tears as his father comforted him. "I'm sorry you ended up here. It's my fault. I was too weak to protect you from the situation with the Nomu, and because of that, you got hurt." Izuku cried. "There's nothing to be sorry about," his father reassured him. "It's not your fault. I chose to fight on my own. You are just a kid, and it is my duty to protect you." After a moment of crying, Izuku pulled away and sat in one of the chairs. "Thanks for that. I really needed it," he said, feeling a bit lighter. No problem, kid, his father replied with a small smile. They talked for a while, and soon they learned that his father could leave the hospital. They headed home together, with Luna still in the car. The next day, Izuku and his family were on their way back to UA. His father, still wrapped in bandages, looked like a mummy but was determined to return. As they arrived, Shinso went in first, and Izuku approached the gate, walking alongside his father. They were unaware that someone was waiting for them. As they walked, Izuku heard a familiar voice calling out to him. Izuku! Inko shouted, rushing toward them. Izuku froze, and his father noticed his sudden stillness. Izuku, where Hoshouda? Inko exclaimed, her expression shifting to one of anger upon seeing his father. What are you doing here, Inko? His father asked, his tone sharp. I'm here to get my son. Izuku, let's go home, Inko insisted, her voice firm. Izuku trembled at the confrontation, and his father placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Your son? From what I know, you didn't have any children, his father replied, confusion evident in his voice. Well, I did. Now let go of my son. Inko demanded, using her quirk to pull Izuku toward her. His father quickly countered with his own quirk, stopping her in her tracks. I need an explanation, he said, his voice steady. Like you'd care. You left me for what? A loud blonde. Inko shot back, her anger palpable. Izuku was caught in the middle, unsure of what to do as the tension escalated. You weren't having any problems with anything, so what was it? Dadzawa looked at Inko, who hesitated before turning back to him. Just then she shouted that she had been Vigilante. They turned back to her, and she appeared even angrier. She expressed her frustration about how she had planned to tell him the day he left, only for him to end their relationship and leave her with their child. Every day she had to care for their son, a constant reminder of him. Chills ran down Izuku's back, and he felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He questioned whether he even deserved to call Aizawa dad anymore, feeling the weight of blame on his shoulders. Dadzawa then pointed out that if their son was a reminder of him, Inko's attempts to reclaim him were puzzling. Inko dismissed him, instructing Izuku to come to her. The venom in her voice made him flinch. Dadzawa warned her that Izuku was not going anywhere and suggested she leave unless she wanted to face consequences for her actions. Inko declared that she would get him back one way or another before storming off. Izuku glanced at Dadzawa, who was already looking at him, prompting him to quickly look away as they continued walking. He suggested they leave before they were late, and they walked in silence, the atmosphere tense and fragile. Once they arrived in class, Izuku entered first. When Dadzawa followed, the students bombarded him with questions. He instructed them to settle down, announcing that they had to face some dangerous individuals recently and that their challenges were far from over. The class felt a chill at his words until he broke into a grin, revealing that they would have a sports festival in 2 weeks and expected everyone to train hard for it. A wave of relief washed over the students, and they began chatting before Dadzawa refocused them on class. Later that night, Izuku lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, plagued by a voice that wouldn't leave him alone. It taunted him, suggesting that he would be doing everyone a favor by ending his life. He resisted the urge to listen, reminding himself that he had people who depended on him. He pushed the voice aside and went downstairs to find Dadzawa drinking coffee. Despite his doubts about being a nuisance, he asked if he could join him on patrol that night. Dadzawa sighed but agreed, telling him to be ready by 10 and not to blame him for what might happen. Izuku hurried to prepare and checked the time, realizing they had about 20 minutes before heading out. He grabbed his notebook and made some edits before going downstairs to meet Dadzawa. They left together, ready for the night ahead. The next morning was routine. Izuku got up, dressed, and had breakfast before heading to UA. They trained, but Izuku held back, frustrating Katsuki, while he and Dadzawa still avoided deeper conversations. Later that day, feeling restless, Izuku considered training but decided against it, feeling sore and tired from earlier. He picked up his phone and plugged in the headphones Dadzawa had given him, listening to music to pass the time. He sensed someone watching him but chose to ignore it. Checking the time, he realized it was past 9 p.m. and decided to join Dadzawa on patrol. Using his shadow leap ability, he quickly made his way downstairs, finding Dadzawa resting on the couch. He asked if he could join him on patrol, and after a moment of silence, Dadzawa agreed and got up to prepare. Izuku felt a twinge of guilt for waking him but pushed it aside, knowing Dadzawa needed to patrol. After changing into his suit, Izuku played with Kiki and Mimi while waiting for Dadzawa. Once they were ready, they met up with their usual team, separating during patrol to avoid being seen together. Throughout the night, Izuku felt a lingering gaze on him but dismissed it as unimportant. As they patrolled, Izuku sat on the edge of a rooftop while Dadzawa stood at a distance. Noticing Dadzawa's unusual quietness, he asked if he was okay. Dadzawa sighed, explaining that it was quieter than usual. Izuku acknowledged this, and they continued their patrol in comfortable silence. After their shift, they headed home, Izuku enjoying a milkshake while Dadzawa sipped on his drink. He bought me one as a reward for my good work, and I accepted it without complaint. More like a reward for being a nuisance. I paid the comment no mind and kept walking with Dad by my side. After a bit of walking, we got home to find Papa waiting in the living room. He smiled at us before greeting us, saying there was some food in the microwave if we were hungry. I nodded and headed for my room, with Luna following closely behind. Once I got there, I changed clothes, took a cold shower, and then climbed into bed. Luna came up to me and lay next to me, resting her head on my chest. I petted her while my mind filled with negative thoughts. What could they have been following me for? Were they targeting me? They probably were, but why? I knew it could be because I was Shadow, but they would have made a move by now, right? Or was I just overthinking the situation? With all these thoughts swirling in my head, a headache began to grow, so I reluctantly got up to clear my mind, which probably woke Luna. I took out my phone and turned it on, momentarily blinding myself in the dark room. Once my eyesight adjusted, I started scrolling through random things until I stumbled upon a Princess All Might meme that nearly made me burst out laughing. An idea struck me, and I smirked as I searched for more memes to annoy my sweet dad. Prepare to be traumatized, Dad. Time skipped to morning. As I finished editing my notebook, I turned to the window and saw the sun peeking through. Another night without sleep, no surprise there. I started getting ready for the day, and it continued as usual, getting to UA, ignoring Dad, annoying Katsuki and some other teachers, training, going home, doing homework, playing with the cats, sneaking out for patrol, and once again feeling eyes on my back that never seemed to go away. Yeah, that was basically my schedule. Time skip 1 week. It was finally the day of the sports festival. You might think everyone was nervous, and that was true, except for Izuku, who felt quite confident about it. He was extremely tired, having not slept at all the previous night due to patrolling, which he didn't regret, even if he had gotten injured while fighting an entire gang. Other than that, he felt ready for anything. When he arrived at UA, he managed to catch a half-hour nap in the teacher's lounge after asking Aizawa for permission. He was soon woken up to prepare for the festival. Once he was ready, he went to meet the others, who were already waiting for him. After a while, they were finally called to the stadium to start the festival. As they entered, everyone grew even more nervous at the sight of the crowd, but Izuku handled it like a pro. Midnight called him up to represent the students. With a calm inhale and exhale, he greeted everyone, wishing them luck and playfully warning them not to cry to their parents once he won. As he finished, the crowd began to boo him, but he simply ignored it, throwing a few glares in return. Midnight explained how the festival would work, and a wheel on a screen began spinning to determine the first challenge. The wheel landed on an obstacle course race. Midnight explained the rules, and all the students got ready at the starting line. After a brief wait, Midnight shouted, "Start!" and everyone rushed into the tunnel, pushing and squeezing their way through. Izuku waited patiently, listening to present Mick's announcements. When he heard that others were already passing the first obstacle, the Robo Infernos, he grew irritated by how long it was taking. He quickly walked into the shade, Shadow leaping to the end of the tunnel, and then started running. As he was seen by the camera robot, Present Mike made a quick announcement, recognizing Izuku Midoriya. Izuku flashed the camera a quick smile before continuing his run. He dashed through the remaining Robo Infernos and moved on to the next obstacle, the fall. Some students were crossing while others hesitated at the edge, contemplating how to get across. Izuku grinned and ran over the rope effortlessly. As he crossed, he noticed Mina and Uraraka quickly passing him. He also spotted a girl with pink hair using gadgets to navigate the obstacle, and he thought about how cool they were but reminded himself to focus. With that thought, he teleported to the end of the fall and continued, not too far behind Todoroki and Bakugou. Now they had arrived at the final barrier, a minefield. Present Mike announced that it was set up so that the layout could be seen if one looked closely. They weren't very powerful but were loud and flashy enough to startle anyone. Izuku took a moment to assess the minefield and thought it looked too easy. With that, he dashed across the field, getting closer to Bakugou, who was not far from Todoroki. Once Bakugou spotted Izuku, he unleashed an explosion in his direction, but Izuku simply sidestepped and continued his run. Bakugou demanded that Izuku stay out of his way, firing another explosion at him. Growing increasingly annoyed, Izuku ignored Bakugou and teleported to the end of the minefield, eager to complete the obstacle course. The announcer, Mike, declared that someone new was in the lead as the camera focused on Izuku. The crowd erupted in cheers, thrilled to see a change in leadership. Other contestants quickened their pace, with Todoroki using his ice to glide over the field while Bakugou blasted his way through, determined to catch up to Izuku. Just as Bakugou closed in on Izuku, he attempted to punch him, but Izuku dodged and surged forward at full speed. Mike expressed his surprise at Izuku's sudden burst of speed, noting that it seemed as if he had been holding back. As they approached the studio, Izuku felt the adrenaline coursing through him, relishing the exhilarating sensation. While he maintained the lead, Bakugou and Todoroki were trading places behind him. They raced through the tunnel, and the audience was on the edge of their seats, eager to see who would finish first. Mike announced the winner of the first challenge as Izuku emerged from the tunnel, claiming first place. The crowd went wild as Mike shouted Izuku's name, and he smirked to himself while the other contestants flooded into the stadium. Izuku thought to himself that the challenge had been easy, and he had barely used his teleportation ability. He leaned against the wall, resting his eyes as he awaited the arrival of the other contestants. Midnight then instructed everyone to check the chart for their names. Those who were not listed would be disqualified, while the rest could enjoy a 15-minute break. Izuku, confident he had made it to the next challenge, headed to the waiting room. After the break, all the participants who had passed the challenge emerged from the waiting rooms, eager for Midnight to announce the next challenge. She revealed that the next event would be a cavalry run, requiring teams of 4, with 1 person in front and 3 carrying them. Midnight explained the rules, emphasizing the importance of keeping the rider off the ground and the need to collect as many bands as possible. The moment she mentioned Izuku's impressive point total, everyone turned to look at him, but he merely regarded them with boredom, having grown accustomed to such reactions. As the teams formed, everyone avoided Izuku, seeking out other partners. He thought it would be easy to assemble the right team. Just then, Uraraka approached him, asking if she could join his team. He smiled and agreed. Uraraka suggested they recruit Ida, but Izuku informed her that he had already joined Todoroki's team. They decided to split up to find 2 more teammates. Izuku soon spotted a girl with pink hair and gadgets and directly asked her to join his team. She eagerly agreed, introducing herself as Mei Hatsum, excited about the potential for her inventions. After a firm handshake, Izuku led her to find Uraraka, who was waiting at their meeting spot. With only 5 minutes left, Midnight announced the time limit. Uraraka excitedly revealed that she had recruited Tokoyami for their team. Izuku welcomed him with a nod and then explained their strategy. As time ran out, Midnight called for everyone to get into formation. Uraraka and Mei positioned themselves in the back, with Tokoyami in front, while Izuku was carried by them. With the signal to start, they dashed toward the other teams. Uraraka activated her quirk and Mei deployed her gadget, propelling them out of the danger zone. Present Mike commented on their impressive escape. As they raced on, Izuku noticed Todoroki's group approaching but focused on warning his team about other competitors. Suddenly, Bakugou charged at them, attempting to snatch the headband from Izuku's head. Just in time, Dark Shadow intervened, and Izuku teleported away, apologizing to his team. Dark Shadow expressed concern for Izuku, who was puzzled by being called Master. After a moment of confusion, Izuku gently petted Dark Shadow, who leaned into his hand, and he smiled softly, agreeing to the title. When time was called, Midnight instructed everyone to hand in their headbands and wait for the results to see who would advance to the next challenge. The contestants began submitting their bands, gathering by the stage in anticipation of the outcome. Izuku sat against the wall, grappling with the voice in his head that he thought had vanished. After a while, Midnight announced that they had everyone's results. The crowd surged forward to get a better look, while Izuku remained in his spot, scanning the board of names for his own. The voice taunted him, calling him names, but Izuku chose to ignore it and stood up to find something to eat, tuning out Midnight's booming voice through the speakers. She declared that anyone not on the board was disqualified and that those moving on to the next challenge had a 30-minute break. Learners could play a minigame or rest to conserve their energy. Izuku discreetly summoned an energy bar as he made his way to the waiting room. He glanced at the TV and saw that he was the first to battle, facing his purple-haired brother. This would be an easy match, so he didn't feel the need to rest, but he decided to take a moment to relax anyway. After the break, Izuku left the room, unable to sleep, and headed to the arena. He contemplated whether to use all his quirks or just rely on one. Ultimately, he decided to use teleportation for now. Upon entering the arena, he stood face to face with Hitoshi. Hisashi announced the match, introducing Izuku as the winner of the previous challenges and Hitoshi as a seemingly sleepy opponent. Hisashi received a playful jab from Aizawa for his comment. Midnight explained the rules. Disqualification would occur if a participant was unable to move, gave up, or went out of bounds. The match began, and Hitoshi rushed at Izuku, attempting a right hook. Izuku dodged effortlessly, evading Hitoshi's kicks and punches. Hisashi remarked on Hitoshi's inability to land a hit, earning another light reprimand from Aizawa. Noticing Hitoshi tiring, Izuku decided to conclude the battle swiftly by teleporting Hitoshi out of bounds, securing an easy victory. Hisashi announced Izuku as the winner. After leaving the arena, Izuku made his way to where his classmates were watching. Uraraka approached him, but he ignored her and sat at the back, distancing himself from everyone. Time passed, and it was soon time for Izuku to face Shoto. He had nearly fallen asleep when someone shook him awake to inform him he was next. Irritated, he walked to the fighting arena and spotted Endeavor approaching. Choosing to ignore him, Izuku walked past, but Endeavor called out, urging him to give his all in the battle against Shoto, implying that Shoto would have no choice but to use his fire. Izuku stopped but didn't turn around. He coldly addressed Endeavor, asserting that Todoroki was not a puppet for his ambitions. Even if he pushed Shoto to use his fire, it would be for Shoto's sake, not Endeavor's. With that, Izuku continued to the arena, determined. Once there, he prepared for the fight, aware that Todoroki wouldn't use his full power. Hisashi announced the match, and Midnight signaled the start. Ice shot toward Izuku, but he teleported out of the way and charged at Todoroki. He encouraged Todoroki to use his fire, arguing that it would be unfair for him to use his full power while Todoroki held back. Todoroki, glaring in Endeavor's direction, questioned if his father had bribed Izuku to say that. Izuku insisted that using only half his potential could harm him. Todoroki confirmed he would never be like his father. As more ice spikes flew toward him, Izuku dodged and countered. Frustrated, he urged Todoroki to embrace his full abilities. In a moment of intensity, memories surged through Izuku's mind as he struck Todoroki, igniting his fire. Endeavor cheered, and Izuku smirked, stepping back from the flames. Todoroki expressed gratitude for Izuku's encouragement, and Izuku urged him to focus on the fight. Todoroki unleashed his fire, but Izuku used his ability to turn the flames to ash before teleporting behind Todoroki and striking a pressure point, causing him to faint. Izuku caught him just in time. Midnight announced Izuku as the winner, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Medical robots took Todoroki away, and Izuku returned to his classmates, who surrounded him with compliments, though he felt too exhausted to engage. As the battles continued, Izuku found himself drifting off, the voice in his head still berating him. He pushed it aside, waiting for his next turn. Uraraka called out to him, snapping him back to attention, announcing that he was up against Bakugou. He simply nodded and left, hearing a few voices wishing him good luck before he disappeared. Izuku thought to himself that this might be a bit more challenging than the fight with Todoroki, but he believed he could handle it. As he exited the tunnel, he stood opposite Katsuki, who wore a confident smirk. Present Mike announced the match, declaring it as Izuku Midoriya vs Katsuki Bakugou, both from Class 1A, and the crowd erupted in excitement. Midnight shouted for them to get ready, and the fight began. Katsuki shouted at Izuku to give it his all, charging at him with explosive energy. Izuku remained still, knowing that exposing himself would not be wise. As Katsuki got close, he threw a punch, but Izuku was already above him, dodging the attack. Katsuki quickly evaded a kick aimed at his stomach but retaliated with a series of explosions. The smoke enveloped them, making it difficult for Katsuki to locate Izuku. However, Izuku found it easy to navigate through the smoke, having experienced similar situations during his patrols. He leaped from one spot to another, landing strikes on Katsuki. Frustrated, Katsuki unleashed a more powerful explosion. When the smoke cleared, he was surprised to see Izuku standing unharmed. Though Izuku was growing tired, he pushed on, determined not to lose. He devised a plan to use the shadows, collecting rocks from the ground to throw at Katsuki. While Katsuki was distracted by the rocks, Izuku closed the distance and landed a punch to Katsuki's face, followed by a powerful kick to his stomach that sent him crashing into the wall, creating a crater. Present Mike announced Izuku as the winner of the festival, and the crowd cheered. Izuku made his way to the tunnel, teleporting his water bottle to himself for a refreshing drink. As the medals were awarded, Izuku stood proudly in first place, with Katsuki in second and Tokoyami in third. He barely registered the words being said until he heard the familiar voice of All Might announcing his arrival. All Might congratulated Izuku, who lowered his head as he received his medal. Izuku thought to himself that the day felt like it was dragging on. After the festival concluded, he informed his father that he would be heading home. He teleported to his room, showered, changed into comfortable clothes, and fell onto his bed, quickly drifting off to sleep. It was now time for Izuku's patrol, and although he wasn't particularly enthusiastic, he prepared himself nonetheless. Once ready, he shadow jumped away from the house and began his patrol route. After about 30 minutes, he took a break, sitting at the edge of a 14-story building to relax and hum a tune. He had already intervened in a few minor crimes, but overall, the night was quiet. Izuku, also known as Shadow, appreciated moments like this, a peaceful night under a starry sky that reminded him of the time spent with his mother, gazing at the stars and sharing stories before he was diagnosed as quirkless. Erasure landed next to him and asked if he was okay. Shadow nodded, still gazing at the sky, and shared a memory of looking at the stars with his mother, reminiscing about their conversations and the secrets they shared. He recalled how everything had changed when their relationship was tested. Erasure moved closer and embraced him, and they remained that way for a moment before continuing their patrol together. Izuku walked toward the teacher's lounge to relax before class. He appeared calm, but he was growing frustrated by a voice that seemed to be shouting at him. Upon entering the lounge, he flopped onto the couch, surprised to find it empty. He expected to see some teachers resting before classes began, but it seemed they were all busy. Within moments, he fell asleep. Aizawa entered the room a few minutes later to inform Izuku that he would need to stay after school. However, upon seeing his son asleep, he decided to let him rest. He retrieved a blanket from the couch across from Izuku and gently draped it over him before quietly leaving to continue his grading. Aizawa had been observing Izuku closely, noting that he seemed quieter, more tired, and lost in thought. He felt a growing concern as Izuku had warmed up to them but still kept his past to himself. Aizawa hoped that one day, Izuku would feel comfortable enough to share his secrets. A few days had passed since the sports festival, and Class 1A was now being recognized by people wherever they went. In class, they chatted excitedly about their newfound recognition until Aizawa entered, prompting them to settle down after greeting him. He announced that they would be selecting their code names, or hero names, which sparked a flurry of chatter until Aizawa activated his quirk, silencing them once more. Just then, Midnight entered the classroom, announcing that she would take Aizawa's place for the name selection. Aizawa declared that he would be sleeping and instructed them to wake him only if someone was in serious danger. He then settled into his sleeping bag on the floor in a corner of the room. Midnight excitedly explained to the nervous students in front of her that they needed to pass their boards to the people behind them and write down their chosen hero names. Once they had done so, they were to come to the front and present their names. Izuku was uncertain about what he wanted his hero name to be. He had a few ideas in mind but wasn't sure if they were good enough. After some thought, he finally settled on one and wrote it down on his board. Standing up, he walked to the front of the class and revealed his choice: Underground Hero, Nozomi. Midnight gave him an encouraging pat on the head and asked if he was sure about being an underground hero, suggesting that he could have all the attention as a spotlight hero instead. Izuku explained that he preferred to avoid the spotlight and would rather remain unknown to most people. Midnight praised his choice, noting that Nozomi meant hope, and he returned to his seat, resting his head on his arms. Once everyone had finished with their choices, they woke Aizawa up, and Midnight left for her next class. Aizawa informed the students that they needed to pick a hero agency from their options for their internship. He reminded them that they still had to prove themselves to the professional heroes, so there would be no slacking off. The students responded affirmatively as Aizawa projected the list of agencies, noting that Izuku had the highest number of offers. Aizawa explained that those on the board would choose from their offers, while the others would receive a sheet of paper to select from. Each agency specialized in different areas, so they needed to keep that in mind. The internship would last an entire week, and with that, Aizawa dismissed the class. After class, Izuku approached Aizawa to discuss joining his agency, providing several reasons for his choice. Fortunately, Aizawa agreed and stamped Izuku's page, officially making him his intern. The rest of the day passed quickly, and they headed home. As usual, Izuku struggled to sleep, scrolling through his phone and playing with the cats that lounged on his bed. The week progressed, and soon it was Monday, the day they would split up and go to their chosen agencies. Izuku felt no anxiety about being separated. In fact, he was relieved to escape the overly cheerful atmosphere of his classmates. He walked alongside Aizawa toward the agency. It wasn't large, but it felt cozy and functional, which was all that mattered. Aizawa showed him around and introduced him to the few people in the building before they prepared for their night patrol. Izuku learned a great deal from Aizawa during this time, including new moves and how to better utilize his quirk. His skills improved significantly throughout his internship. As the days flew by, it was already Friday. Aizawa decided they would patrol in Hosu for their final day, and they took the train to their destination. While gazing out the window, Izuku noticed something flying toward them. Reacting quickly, he used his shadow manipulation to move people out of harm's way just before the object crashed into the train with a loud screech. The impact of the creature, identified as a Nomu, caused the train to stop, allowing Aizawa and Izuku to move without stumbling. They were about to charge at the Nomu when another figure rushed forward to engage it. Izuku recognized the hero but said nothing, instead directing the passengers to stay calm before following Aizawa outside. They spotted a fire in the distance and were preparing to head toward it when Izuku decided it would be faster to teleport. Upon arriving in the chaotic area, they saw more Nomus wreaking havoc while other heroes worked to extinguish the flames and protect civilians. Aizawa shouted that they had permission to fight when necessary as he dashed toward an injured civilian. Izuku immediately attacked a Nomu, using his shadows to incapacitate it. However, he soon realized that Ito was supposed to be there as well, but he couldn't see him anywhere. With a sense of urgency, Izuku headed toward the alleyways, searching for any signs of his classmate, until he finally spotted him. Hero killer, Stain. Izuku teleported in front of Stain and kicked the katana from his hand. Stain jumped back, sizing up the newcomer and dismissing him as just another fake, claiming he was wasting his time. As Stain dashed for his weapon, Izuku attempted to kick him but missed as Stain dodged. Izuku teleported a safe distance away, watching as Stain retrieved his katana. Stain declared that he would have spared Izuku another day, but now it was time to fight. Izuku smirked beneath his mask, ready for the challenge. He teleported Ida and another hero out of the alleyway just in time to avoid Stain's attack. As he dodged the katana, he aimed a kick at Stain's legs, successfully knocking him down, but not without receiving a painful slash across his own leg in return. Izuku thought about the injury but quickly focused on the battle. Stain taunted him, claiming it was game over for the hero, but before he could lick the blood, it vanished. Stain looked at Izuku's outstretched arm, realizing he was responsible. Stain shouted in frustration, demanding to know what Izuku had done. Without answering, Izuku teleported in front of him, ready to strike, but Stain dodged and ran past him, leaving a cut across Izuku's face. Izuku used his quirk to make Stain's other katana disappear, asserting that without weapons, they were on equal footing. Despite the pain, he maintained a smirk, declaring that it didn't matter if they were equal. Only one would remain standing in the end. Stain leaped onto the wall, attempting to lick the cut on Izuku's face. Izuku quickly teleported behind him but was met with a kick to the stomach that sent him staggering back. Regaining his footing, Izuku remarked that he was pretty stubborn, and he wasn't going down that easily. He glanced behind Stain, noticing Ida preparing to join the fight. Izuku took his phone from behind him and sent his location to Todoroki before putting it back. He removed his mask to reveal a smirk, knowing he would be recognized. He mentioned that while he would love to chat, it probably wouldn't happen, especially considering how dangerous Stain was. He then warned Stain to look behind him. Stain dismissed the warning, but was interrupted when Ida kicked him on the head, sending him crashing into a wall. Izuku laughed, finding humor in the situation despite his injuries. Stain stumbled to his feet, glaring at Izuku, and pulled out his knife, leaping toward them. Just as he aimed to stab Ida, fire erupted from nowhere, blocking his path. Izuku smiled at Todoroki's arrival, but Ida scolded them both, insisting they shouldn't be there. Izuku argued that they were helping and that he would be dead without their assistance, but his words were cut short when a knife struck him and Todoroki. Izuku handled the pain with bravado, while Todoroki questioned why Stain would let him talk during a battle. Izuku shouted back that Stain could at least be courteous before running up the wall. Todoroki shot ice at Stain, who was charging toward them. Izuku used shadows to hold Stain in place, but he continued to struggle. Ida commanded Todoroki to use ice on his engines, and Todoroki complied. Ida then powered up and dashed at Stain, landing a powerful kick that knocked him out. After the fight, Izuku joined the others, cheerfully remarking on the fun they had, despite the danger they faced. Todoroki suggested they take Stain to the pros and get their injuries checked. Izuku insisted he was fine, dragging Stain along with the shadows. Exiting the alley, they encountered a hero who expressed concern for their well-being. Izuku pointed out that they should be more worried about Stain. The hero was astonished to learn they had captured him. More heroes arrived, and a female hero assured them that medics were on the way. When another hero recognized Stain, Izuku confirmed it while leaning against a pole for support. Erasurehead appeared and asked if Izuku was okay. Izuku responded with a hint of sarcasm, pointing out the knife in his torso. Aizawa then pulled him into a hug, which Izuku accepted before being released. Suddenly, a winged Nomu swooped down and grabbed Izuku, causing the knife to dig deeper. Just as he prepared to fight back, he saw Stain approaching and was stunned when Stain stabbed the Nomu, ending its threat. They both fell, but Izuku teleported to safety while Stain landed on the Nomu. Stain declared that he believed Izuku and All Might were the only true heroes, standing still as the pros watched in shock. Medics and police soon arrived to take Stain away, while the 3 Hero Corps students were transported to the hospital, one of them losing blood quickly. The next day, Izuku woke up feeling sore. He kept his eyes closed, listening to the sounds around him. After a while, 3 people entered the room and took seats beside him, chatting quietly. Too tired to engage, he eventually opened his eyes to see the dim light. Upon realizing he was awake, Hizashi rushed to get a nurse while Aizawa and Hitoshi remained by his side. Aizawa asked how he felt, his usual monotone voice tinged with concern. Izuku replied that he felt sore, attempting to sit up, but Aizawa gently restrained him, warning that he might reopen his stitches. Hizashi and a nurse entered for a checkup, and afterward, they were informed that Izuku would be released in 2 days, depending on his recovery. The room fell into silence. Curious about their quietness, Izuku asked what was wrong. Hitoshi expressed frustration, reminding him of the danger he had put himself in. Izuku defended his actions, stating that Ida would have been in greater danger without his help. Aizawa shot him a glare, but Izuku was used to it. He then mentioned his regeneration quirk, claiming he was already healed, which prompted Hizashi to question why he hadn't mentioned it before. Izuku admitted he had forgotten about it since he rarely used it. To break the tension, Izuku suggested they change the subject. Hitoshi asked what he wanted to talk about, and Izuku replied that he was open to anything as long as it didn't involve being scolded. Hitoshi then inquired about Izuku's encounter with Stain, prompting a sharp reaction from Hizashi and Aizawa. Hitoshi expressed his thoughts, noting that the situation wasn't as frightening as it might have been for Ida. Izuku agreed, feeling that the day had dragged on with nothing to do but chat about random topics. Eventually, Izuku fell asleep, and when he awoke, it was already the next morning and he found himself alone in the room. He thought to himself that his wounds should be healed by now and decided to leave the hospital to avoid lingering there any longer. He planned to face his father, Papa, and Hitoshi later. After getting out of bed, he searched the cupboards and found his hero suit. He put it on, folded the hospital gown they had given him, and made the bed, placing the clothes neatly on it. He opened the window, activated his shadow manipulation to create a pair of wings, and jumped out, soaring into the sky before heading home. Meanwhile, Aizawa was making his way to class. Hizashi had gone to his own class, and Hitoshi had moved ahead of them. Aizawa was more concerned about his problem child than teaching, despite Hizashi assuring him that Izuku was fine. Upon entering the classroom, he noticed the students quieting down and taking their seats. He greeted the class, noting Izuku's absence. Before he could elaborate, Denki interrupted with concern about Izuku's well-being, prompting Aizawa to glare at him. Aizawa explained that Izuku had been injured during the previous night's events but assured them that he, along with Ida and Todoroki, would be fine with some rest. Just as he was about to continue, his phone rang. Reluctantly, he answered it. The voice on the other end identified themselves as calling from the hospital, trailing off uncertainly. Aizawa's concern grew as he pressed for information, fearing something had happened to Izuku. The hospital staff informed him that Izuku was missing, explaining that when the nurses went to check on him, they found the bed made, his suit gone, and the window open. Aizawa rubbed his temples in frustration, instructing them to call him if they found anything. Before he could finish, the classroom door swung open, and Izuku appeared, wearing his hero suit, covered in remnants from the previous night. Aizawa quickly reassured the hospital staff that he had found Izuku and ended the call. Aizawa confronted Izuku, expressing his anger at his decision to leave the hospital. Izuku defended himself, insisting he was healed and had no reason to stay. Aizawa sighed, telling him to take a seat and to get a uniform from Nizu during break. Izuku offered Hitoshi a reassuring smile before heading to his desk, and classes resumed. As the class of 1A waited for their next teacher, Izuku felt the minutes drag on. When the bell finally rang, Aizawa entered, greeted by the students. He started the lesson, and soon they were waiting for their next PRD teacher. Izuku grew impatient, wishing he could be sleeping instead of waiting. Just then, All Might made a grand entrance, announcing the day's lesson on rescue training. The students cheered, and All Might instructed them to get suited up. He activated a remote, revealing their suits, and they hurried to change. Izuku teleported to the changing rooms, quickly dressed, and was about to leave when Kirishima blocked his path, eager to chat. Izuku stared at him for a moment before pushing past and ignoring Ida's calls. Izuku teleported to the observation room, where he sat down, trying to ignore All Might's gaze. He felt his eyelids growing heavy, but the arrival of the rest of the class brought him back to attention. All Might explained the rescue training, detailing how they would be divided into groups to locate a civilian himself before racing to him. The first group was announced, and Izuku was included. All Might led them to the starting point and took his position at the finish line. With a loud countdown, he signaled the start of the race. Izuku sprang into action, swiftly navigating the obstacles while leaving the others behind. He focused intently, listening for any signs of the others. He noticed Zero gaining on him and teleported further ahead, determined to maintain his lead. The rest of the group followed closely behind, but Zero was the closest competitor. Out of the corner of Izuku's eye, he spotted All Might and immediately changed direction toward him, with Zero following closely behind. It turned into a race between Izuku and Zero. Izuku focused on maintaining his speed while ensuring he didn't slip. They were nearing the finish line, and it appeared Zero was about to take first place. Just before Zero could cross the line, Izuku activated his glitch ability and surged ahead, claiming victory. All Might's voice boomed as he announced Izuku's win. After some time, the others returned, and they made their way back to the observation room. Many classmates approached to congratulate them, but Izuku preferred to stand in a corner, avoiding the attention. Eventually, it was time for the others to participate in the rescue race, and when the PRD ended, Izuku happily teleported away. It was now time for the final exams. The class had spent the last week studying diligently, and Izuku felt prepared, having reviewed everything they had covered so far. In contrast, Denki was quite anxious. His classmates tried to reassure him, but some of their comments unintentionally hurt his feelings. During lunch, Izuku's classmates discussed the exams and what they might entail. Aizawa had kept details to a minimum, only revealing that the exams would cover everything from the first semester, including combat and rescue training. Kendo mentioned that an upperclassman had told her they would be fighting the villain bots again. Hanta, Mashireo, Kyoka, Denki, and Mina studied with Momo, while Katsuki drilled the lessons into Eijiro's head. Izuku, Ochako, Tenya, and the others studied in their own ways. Class 1A took the written exam over 3 days in their homeroom, and thankfully, everyone managed to pass. Nizu and the faculty held a meeting to discuss changing the finals format, incorporating teamwork and combat against actual opponents. Past tests had used villain bots to prevent injury complaints, but the teachers decided to adjust the tests to better prepare the students for intense battles with villains. Class 1A stood in their suits, waiting for Aizawa to arrive and explain the practical portion of the exams. After some time, during which Izuku nearly dozed off, Aizawa finally arrived, accompanied by several pro-heroes. Izuku was relieved that All Might was not among them, though he suspected he would show up eventually. Aizawa explained that there had been a change of plans. Instead of fighting robots like in the entrance exam, they would be battling the pro-heroes. Most students, except for Izuku and a few others, looked at Aizawa in disbelief. The class erupted in chatter, but Izuku remained focused on his surroundings, contemplating how he could escape if needed. Aizawa lifted a pair of cuffs, indicating they would be used to limit the pro-hero's abilities, making it easier for the students. He reminded them that they had 2 options, defeat their opponent or escape, but they wouldn't be given the location of the escape route. The students sighed in relief, knowing they had a chance to escape if necessary. Aizawa emphasized that their performance would determine whether they could attend the training camp, and the students rallied together, shouting their motto. Once the teams were assigned, Izuku felt discontent with his partner. Aizawa announced the matchups, and when he reached Izuku and Katsuki, a sudden gust of wind heralded All Might's dramatic entrance, completing Aizawa's statement. The class buzzed with surprise, as both Katsuki and Izuku were aware of All Might's formidable strength. The first team prepared for their match, and as they shouted their rallying cry, Izuku and Katsuki got ready. Izuku attempted to strategize with Katsuki, but Katsuki stormed off as soon as Izuku approached, leaving Izuku to abandon his plans. When the signal was given, they began to move cautiously, not exchanging a word. Suddenly, Izuku sensed an incoming attack and quickly teleported them both into an alleyway, scanning for any threats. A powerful blast of air surged past them, destroying nearby objects, and All Might soon appeared. Izuku turned to share his plan with Katsuki, only to find he had vanished. Katsuki shouted fiercely, launching an explosion at All Might from above. He landed and waited for the smoke to clear, but All Might swiftly grabbed him and delivered a swift strike, sending him back. Struggling to rise, Katsuki prepared for another attack. Izuku decided to intervene and surprise All Might. He teleported behind the pro hero and used his shadow ability to restrain him. As All Might struggled, Izuku stood firm and approached him. He activated his nightmare ability, locking eyes with All Might, who was about to confront his deepest fears. All Might's struggles intensified, and he called out for it to stop, but Izuku remained focused, glancing at Katsuki, who stared at him in disbelief. Izuku questioned why Katsuki was looking at him that way, and Katsuki demanded to know what he had done to All Might. Izuku simply sighed, revealing a smirk as he considered the advantage he held. Izuku decided it was time to put an end to the battle. He skillfully teleported out of Katsuki's hold and positioned himself in front of All Might, quickly binding him with capture tape. With that, the fight concluded. The announcer, Mike, declared that Izuku and Katsuki were the winners. As Izuku deactivated his quirk, he felt a trickle of blood from his nose but chose to ignore it, walking towards the observation room and leaving Katsuki behind. The students who had not succeeded in the previous challenge were informed about their upcoming tasks, and Class 1A was on their way to camp. Izuku sat next to Katsuki, who was grumbling about the seating arrangement, while Hitoshi occupied the other side, making it somewhat bearable for Izuku. He turned to Hitoshi and asked if he could rest his head on his shoulder. Hitoshi silently agreed, allowing Izuku to lean against him. Just as Izuku began to drift off, Luna appeared and settled on his lap. Surprised, Izuku petted the cat, who purred contentedly. He excitedly announced to his teacher, Aizawa, that Luna was joining them. Aizawa gave him a skeptical look but did not object. With that, Izuku fell asleep, surrounded by his classmates and the adorable cat. Eventually, they arrived at their destination, and Hitoshi gently woke Izuku. They disembarked from the bus, with Luna perched around Izuku's neck. The group found themselves at the edge of a cliff, and while everyone else was puzzled, Izuku seemed to understand the situation without explanation. Suddenly, a car pulled up and two women dressed as cats stepped out. Izuku recognized them immediately. However, he soon zoned out, lost in thought, until the ground trembled beneath them, causing the cliff's edge to crumble. In a flash, Izuku teleported himself and Hitoshi to safety next to Aizawa, who sighed and remarked on Izuku's tendency to zone out. Embarrassed, Izuku looked away. Aizawa reminded him that they needed to find the camp and warned Hitoshi to keep Izuku safe. After a quick ruffle of Izuku's hair, they teleported to join the rest of the class. Upon arrival, they found their classmates engaged in battle with what Aizawa referred to as earth beasts. Izuku utilized his shadow quirk to dismantle the beasts approaching him and assisted Hitoshi when he encountered difficulties. They made their way ahead of the class toward the camp, relieved to encounter fewer beasts along the way. Izuku was grateful for the quiet, as he was on the verge of falling asleep while resting against Hitoshi. When he finally woke up, he felt a familiar cat liking his face. It was Mimi. Izuku playfully remarked that everyone could join them if they wanted to see him. He noticed Hitoshi still sleeping, with Luna curled up on his lap. Just then, Aizawa and the others arrived, and Izuku woke Hitoshi. The group was shocked to see the two boys on the ground, except for Aizawa, who appeared unfazed. Pixie Bob, one of the newcomers, expressed disbelief at their early arrival. Izuku simply shrugged and returned to playing with Mimi, who used her quirk to lift him, Hitoshi, and Luna into the air. They were having fun while the others watched, and Aizawa seemed exasperated. Their playful moment was interrupted when the rest of the class arrived, exhausted and complaining about their journey. As they collapsed onto the ground, the people from the building came out to greet them. Before anyone could speak, Denki noticed the absence of Izuku and Hitoshi. The class looked around in confusion, prompting Aizawa to facepalm. He instructed them to look up, revealing the two boys in the air with the cats. A flustered Ida demanded they come down, and reluctantly, they complied. Aizawa welcomed them to the training camp and introduced the cat-dressed individuals as the Wild PP cats. The students were instantly excited. They informed everyone that dinner was prepared for that night, but they would need to cook for themselves for the rest of the week. Izuku leaned against Hitoshi, feeling tired again. He noticed a young boy standing next to Mandalay and approached him, squatting down to offer a handshake, hoping to make a good impression. However, instead of reciprocating, the boy prepared to kick him. In a split second, Izuku teleported to a nearby tree branch, avoiding the blow and expressing his frustration at the boy's actions. Mandalay nervously laughed and apologized on behalf of the child, who was named Koda. Izuku returned to Hitoshi, resting his head on his shoulder to calm down and prevent his quirk from acting up. Izuku looked up at Hitoshi as he handed over his phone and earphones. Gratefully, Izuku accepted them and began listening to music. Aizawa apologized to Mandalay and Koda, who was hiding behind her leg, explaining that Hitoshi sometimes struggled to control his anger and quirk. Mandalay reassured him that it was fine and suggested they head inside, where they could unpack and bathe after eating. Without hesitation, everyone rushed inside while Izuku and Hitoshi walked alongside Aizawa. Later that morning, Izuku sat on the rooftop, having not slept at all. He decided to teleport up there to watch the sunrise. Hours later, he heard noise from inside, recognizing it as the PP cats waking the class. He teleported to the room where the others had slept, gathered his belongings, and prepared for the day, already anticipating what was to come. After breakfast, Aizawa led the students to a cliffside for training. He explained that they would be pushing their quirks to their limits. Aizawa tossed a ball to Katsuki, who caught it and prepared to throw it using his quirk. The class watched in astonishment as Aizawa revealed the distance device, showing that Katsuki had only improved slightly since the fitness test. Aizawa noted that while they had improved in many areas, their quirks needed more work. He handed each student a page detailing their assignments for the day, and shouts of agreement filled the air. Pixie Bob then transformed the landscape to suit each student's needs, and they immediately got to work. Class 1B arrived, and Aizawa explained that the PP cats were there to assist everyone in their training. Izuku, eager to start, didn't even glance at his assignment. He began using his glitch quirk, teleporting around the area without a clear direction. After some time, curiosity led him to a wall, and he focused on glitching through it, reminiscent of a speedster. He practiced this a few times before shifting his focus to invisibility, toggling between being visible and invisible for about an hour until fatigue set in. As the day progressed, dinner time approached. A few students gathered ingredients to prepare a meal, and after washing up, they settled down for the night. However, Izuku felt restless and decided to visit the cliff he had seen during training. With Luna wrapped around his neck and Mimi perched on his head, he teleported to the cliff and sat on the ground, taking in the view. The cats climbed off him and snuggled into his lap, finding comfort there. After a moment of quiet, Izuku grew tired of the silence and began to think of a song. With his eyes closed, he started to sing softly to himself, enjoying the peacefulness of the evening. Izuku glanced to his side and noticed Koda peacefully asleep, prompting a small smile from him. He returned his gaze to the sky, lost in thought. As the last day of camp arrived, Izuku and Koda had grown closer, often spending time together. After another day of rigorous training, the class was exhausted yet buzzing with excitement about the upcoming test of courage. Following dinner, the students were paired into groups of 2. Unfortunately, Izuku found himself paired with Katsuki, while Shinso teamed up with Shoto. Koda had managed to convince Mandalay to let him join Izuku, and Luna decided to tag along as well. Class 1B ventured into the forest first, having received their instructions, while Class 1A followed shortly after. Katsuki strode ahead of Izuku and Kota, who engaged in light conversation until they were startled by 2 students from Class 1B. Izuku had noticed them beforehand and shot them a glare for startling Kota, then continued walking and chatting with Kota, while Katsuki remained unusually quiet. Suddenly, a pungent smell of smoke filled the air. Izuku quickly instructed Kota to cover his nose with his shirt, which he did without hesitation. Katsuki, filled with anger, expressed his frustration about the League of Villains. Izuku reminded them that their priority was to find the others and escape. He helped Kota onto his back and took the lead, while Katsuki protested but ultimately followed. As they walked, they heard a commotion ahead. Izuku instinctively moved forward and concealed himself in the bushes, discovering Fumikage struggling to control Dark Shadow. Without hesitation, he set Koda down and turned to Katsuki with a serious expression, asking him to watch over Koda until he returned. Izuku stepped out of the bushes, drawing Dark Shadow's attention. The creature prepared to attack but froze upon recognizing Izuku. Izuku approached slowly, extending his hand to Dark Shadow and reassuring him that everything was all right. Dark Shadow calmed down, resting his head against Izuku's hand, and shrank to his normal size, apologizing profusely to both Izuku and Fumikichi. Izuku explained the need to get everyone out safely and lifted Koda onto his back once more. Just then, Mizo emerged from the bushes, expressing relief that Dark Shadow was under control again. Fumikichi noticed Mizo's injury and inquired about it. Mizo clarified that it was from a previous encounter with a villain, easing Fumikichi's worries. Izuku then instructed Dark Shadow to prepare for action, ensuring that Fumikichi was okay with it. Fumikichi agreed, and after a brief exchange, they resumed their journey. Soon, they encountered Shoto and Hitoshi engaged in a battle with a villain. Izuku quickly reacted, commanding Dark Shadow to spring into action. The villain, Moonfish, was swiftly subdued, and with the combined efforts of Katsuki, Shoto, and Izuku, Dark Shadow was tamed. Hitoshi rushed over to Izuku, concerned for his well-being. Izuku reassured him with a small smile, calming Hitoshi's nerves. As they pressed deeper into the forest, they stumbled upon Ochako, who was pinned to the ground by Toga. Izuku teleported to Toga's side, preparing to intervene, but she dodged his attempt. Toga playfully questioned why he would attack her, feigning hurt feelings. Izuku demanded to know what she wanted from them. Toga cheerfully replied that they were there to kidnap Katsuki and Shoto, just as Mr. Compress appeared behind them, holding 2 marbles. And it's a mission success. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go. He then jumped onto the trees and hopped away with Toga running behind him. However, before Mr. Compress could get too far, something wrapped around his leg, pulling him to the ground. Izuku shouted in anger, demanding the return of what was taken from him as he began to glitch and unleashed a powerful punch at Mr. Compress. Koda had been handed over to Fumikichi, just to clarify. Mr. Compress retaliated, kicking Izuku in the stomach and sending him back. In the chaos, Mr. Compress quickly grabbed the marbles and tossed them to Dabi, who appeared unexpectedly. Just before Dabi could seize the marble containing Hitoshi, Mizo managed to grab it, freeing Hitoshi from his confinement. Unfortunately, Shoto was too late to reach Katsuki, and Dabi caught him, releasing him from the marble as well. Izuku paused, his voice filled with determination as he warned Dabi to hand Katsuki over. Dabi chuckled in response, questioning what would happen if he refused. In an instant, Izuku vanished from his spot, reappearing in front of Dabi and delivering a punch, only to discover it was a clone, just like Katsuki. Suddenly, something was injected into his neck, leaving him feeling weak before a hand tightened around his throat. "We got the kid, let's go," the real Dabi announced as a portal opened behind him, close to the other villains. Dabi slowly stepped into the portal, dragging Izuku along, and the last thing Izuku saw before losing consciousness was Hitoshi rushing toward him. Izuku woke up in a rundown bar, his hands chained together and attached to the wall. As he surveyed the room, he noticed Katsuki slumped in a chair, also chained and wearing a muzzle. "Katsuki! Katsuki, wake up," Izuku urged quietly, and moments later, Katsuki stirred awake. "Humph," he exclaimed. Izuku felt frustration rise within him as he told Katsuki to be quiet. "Ah, you're awake?" Shigaraki said, entering the room with the rest of the League of Villains. "What do you want from us, Shigaraki?" Izuku hissed. Shigaraki smirked, asserting his control over the situation. Izuku glared defiantly, only to receive a kick to the stomach, which he met with a chuckle. "I've gone through worse," he declared with a grin, further infuriating Shigaraki. After a moment of silence, Shigaraki calmed himself. "Take the muzzle off him twice," he ordered. Why me?" Twice protested. "Just do it," Shigaraki insisted. Hesitantly, Twice removed the muzzle, and Katsuki glared at him. "I have an offer for you," Shigaraki continued, but Katsuki remained silent, his eyes filled with defiance. "Join the League of Villains." Silence hung in the air until Izuku burst into laughter, catching everyone's attention. "What are you laughing about?" Shigaraki asked angrily. "He's been dreaming about becoming the #1 hero since he was a kid. What makes you think he'll change his mind now?" Izuku gasped between fits of laughter. "Well, we'll just have to convince him. But for now, my master has been wanting to meet you." Izuku froze at those words. "Oh, do you know who my master is?" "With your reaction, it seems like you do," Shigaraki said with a smug grin. "Why wouldn't I know your master is All for One?" Izuku replied, loud enough for Katsuki to hear. "What does he want from me?" Izuku asked, his tone serious. "Oh, no idea, but it's none of my business," Shigaraki explained before turning to Katsuki. "Untie him." Shigaraki commanded. "You do it twice," Dabi said. "Hell no. If you say so." Twice reluctantly approached Katsuki, but was kicked back as Katsuki broke free from his restraints and struck Shigaraki. "No way will I ever become a villain. I'll be the greatest #1 hero you've ever seen, and I'll take you down," Katsuki declared confidently. "What did I tell you?" Izuku said smugly, only to receive a kick to the face. "Shut up, Brett. I'll deal with you later," Shigaraki grinned, but their moment was interrupted by a doorbell. "Pizza delivery," Toga exclaimed in surprise. "You ordered pizza?" Suddenly, All Might smashed through the wall, and the heroes rushed in, capturing the villains. "Young Bakugo, young Aizawa. I'm glad you two are okay," All Might shouted. Izuku muttered under his breath about not having a bruise on his face, but Katsuki heard him. Suddenly, all the villains, including Katsuki and Izuku, began to cough as a black ooze emerged from their mouths, enveloping them before they vanished into thin air. "Nu!" All Might shouted in frustration as he dashed out of the building. Izuku landed hard on the ground, coughing. Once he regained his composure, he realized he was in a devastated area in Kamino, with Katsuki and the League of Villains nearby, including All for One. "Master!" Shigaraki exclaimed, surprised by his master's presence. "I see you failed to escape from the heroes," All for One said, his overwhelming aura filling the space. "I'm sorry I failed, Master." Shigaraki apologized, bowing his head. All for One patted him on the head. "As long as this doesn't happen again." Shigaraki raised his head, determination shining in his eyes. "Of course. I'll make sure of that." Izuku cautiously approached Katsuki but was halted by a piercing gaze. "Izuku Aizawa," All for One said, turning to him. Izuku slowly turned around, only to be grabbed by his hair and lifted off the ground. "I'll be taking your quirks now, as they would be a valuable asset for the future," he said with a grin, activating his quirk and beginning to extract Izuku's abilities. Izuku struggled against him, desperate to fight back. Katsuki propelled himself toward All for One, but was thrown to the ground. "Don't even try. You can't lay a finger on me because you're weak," All for One taunted, continuing his extraction of Izuku's quirks. Suddenly, All Might charged at All for One at full speed. "All for One," he roared. All Might, why don't we finish what we started?" All for One dropped Izuku to the ground, and Katsuki swiftly caught him, realizing that not all of Izuku's quirks had been taken yet. With that, All Might and All for One engaged in a fierce battle while the League of Villains surrounded Izuku and Katsuki. "Deku! Oi, wake up!" Katsuki yelled desperately, and Izuku responded, causing Katsuki to let out a relieved sigh. "You're okay, we just need to get out of here," Katsuki murmured. "Where do you think you're going?" Dabi called out from behind. Katsuki was determined to leave, carrying Izuku on his back. "We're getting out of here," he declared. Shigaraki, filled with anger, charged at them, prompting Izuku to instinctively shadow leap them behind a wall where they found Momo, Tenya, Shoto, and Ijiro. "What are you all doing here?" Katsuki exclaimed, only to be hushed by the group. Momo, concerned, asked if Izuku was all right. "He's okay but weak. FO might have taken his quirks," Katsuki explained, and gasps echoed among the group. Izuku, feeling the weight of the situation, got off Katsuki and turned his gaze toward the fierce battle between All Might and AFO. "Deku, don't even think about it. It's dangerous," Katsuki warned as he approached Izuku. Katsuki's right, you should rest, Todoroki added, trying to convince. Ignoring their concerns, Izuku dashed toward the battle, using shadows to restrain the League of Villains before turning his focus to AFO. With determination, he quickly bound AFO, giving All Might the opening he needed. All Might seized the moment, unleashing his powerful move, United States of Smash. To ensure AFO's defeat and seek revenge, Izuku sent a spike of shadows piercing through AFO. As Izuku surveyed the scene, he saw the League of Villains still restrained, FO lying motionless, and All Might triumphantly lifting his hand to point at the camera in his lean form. However, Shigaraki had managed to escape the restraints and charged at Izuku, vowing revenge. Just then, Izuku's cat sprang into action. Kiki used her black whip to strike Shigaraki, sending him stumbling back. The other cats joined in, attacking him with fury. Izuku smiled at the sight of his cats but was soon overwhelmed by exhaustion. Just then, Katsuki caught him before he could fall. You should get to the medics, he said, guiding Izuku toward the medical team, where Aizawa was rushing to meet them. Izuku, are you okay? Are you hurt? Aizawa asked, his concern evident. Before Izuku could respond, Aizawa enveloped him in a tight hug. Don't you ever do that again, he insisted, and Izuku nodded in agreement. After being checked on, Izuku eventually fell asleep. When he awoke, he found himself in a sleeping bag in his room, surrounded by Aizawa, Hitoshi, and Hizashi, all in their own sleeping bags, with the cats nestled around him. A small smile crept onto his face before he drifted back to sleep. Years later, Izuku had become an underground hero like Aizawa. He and Katsuki had rekindled their friendship, and although Izuku only possessed the quirk of shadow manipulation, he was content. Inko had finally been arrested for her crimes, and he looked forward to returning home to his kittens waiting for him. The end. Izuku finished his singing with a sigh and continued to gaze at the sky, but his moment of peace was interrupted. He turned around to see Koda standing close to the cave and asked what he was doing there. Izuku simply replied that he was sky watching before returning his attention to the clouds above. Koda, curious, inquired why Izuku had been singing, expressing surprise that a hero would be interested in something like that. Izuku explained that singing was part of one of his quirks and suggested that Koda should be sleeping. Koda revealed that this was his hiding spot, a place he kept secret. He came here to enjoy the view when he couldn't sleep. After a moment of contemplation, Izuku asked why Koda disliked heroes so much. Koda's voice rose as he shared that his parents were heroes and had died because of it. Izuku, feeling a mix of empathy and numbness, responded that it was commendable that Koda's parents had died as heroes, a title they would always hold. Noticing the tears in Koda's eyes, Izuku opened his arms and invited him over. Reluctantly, Koda approached and hugged Izuku, finding comfort in the embrace as they settled on the ground together. In an effort to soothe Koda's emotions, Izuku began to think of another song and sang softly, hoping to bring him some peace.